The story begins with the boy standing in front of a tall pillar and panicking, wondering what is going on. He guesses what is the matter, but hopes that it is not so. A kind of elongated lump of power forms in front of him, which forms one source. The boy hides from him, protecting himself with his hands. This energy explodes. A silhouette of a little fairy with wings and long hair appears. The boy closes his eyes in fright, and the fairy says that she is pleased to meet him. He opens his eyes and sees a cute little face that greets him and wishes him a good day. He does not understand and looks questioningly. The fairy greets again and says that her name is Lisa. This was the first such situation since getting into Tesla. That's right, the main character is in Isekai now. Without prejudice, he was suddenly called here into this world of magic and swords Tesla. It was completely unexpected, according to the stories of the main character. There were no signs or warnings to that. He did not understand what had happened. When he woke up, he was already standing there. Everything was white, absolutely empty space, and there were a lot of people around him. He had absolutely no idea what was going on, except that he was in a bad situation. He hears voices shouting, "What is it? What is going on?" The main character realizes that it seems that the people around him don't understand anything either. They keep asking what's going on here, asking at least someone to save them. Thanks to all the screams and screams around him, he was able to calm down and focus on reasoning. He says that he is not alone, which means that he will be able to ask people around him and find out what is the matter. However, he realizes that he cannot move. He feels like something is holding him back. He tries to move and orders his legs to move, but it doesn't work. He starts to panic and wonder why he can't. Then he hears a stern voice demanding silence. He shouts at everyone to listen to him and informs them that they are all going to Tesla now. The main character reflects that the voice of a stranger sounds right in his head. Is he really a god? That Almighty tells them to do their duty. Here, they can get acquainted with the details. A data window appears in front of them. The Almighty says that, first of all, they should get to know each other. After that, they can do what they want. He taps his staff. Then the legs of the main character begin to move. He is glad that his arms and legs are moving. He can control them. He looks up and realizes that the stranger is missing. He remembers all his words in his head. Stops at the order that they should get to know each other. He awkwardly looks around and sees guys who are also awkwardly looking at him, then hiding their gaze. One raises his hand and apologizes. He says that there is no point in standing silently. He offers to introduce themselves to each other. The main character says that he is right and looks at the girl next to him. One blonde guy asks to wait and asks if this voice is familiar to him. If it's not Masa by chance. Everyone agrees and says it's his voice. He sighs and says that he understood what happened. He recognizes someone by the way they speak and asks if he is a Tanapon. The blonde man says that it is. He is a Tanapon. He asks the girl. Her name is Canon, she claims. He says that Tolstoy's name is Voth, and the man with the stupid expression on his face is Bishop. The main character is offended that even in such a terrible place, Tanapon is Tanapon. Tanapon says the old man's name is Elfman. Vota is outraged and asks how many times he told him that his name is Lubov Rashan, not Vota. Tanapon says that he has already mentioned it before. It is too long, it is difficult to pronounce. Canon laughs and says that before that, Wota was Haru's love. Even before that, Chi's love. She adds that it's too complicated, so Wota is a great name. Every time she sees them arguing, her mood lifts. Vota refuses and says he doesn't like it. Masa asks to stop and says that they can't waste time. They are all from the Nine of Dawn, which makes their task easier. Kanan asks Masa, raising his hand, why they shouldn't waste time. Masa tells them to start by looking at the translucent board that is in front of them all. It looks like a game window. He asks them to look at the top left. He adds that before doing this, you need to see if they have anything written there, because he himself only sees the text on his scoreboard. They tell him what they see. Everything is there. Masa asks if everything has been found. It is obvious that this time is a report before some event. If so, then it would be best to spend it usefully. He explains that there are 4 choices on the screen: avatar, skills, items, and rebirth. Now, in no case should they press the rebirth button until the very end. He explains that if they press this button, they will most likely be instantly reborn in another world. Standard settings are unlikely to be a good option. Tanapon immediately removes his hands from the screen and awkwardly looks away. Masa goes on to say that, at first glance, we can say that the principle of creating characters here is the same as in games. In other words, this time is given to them to create a character. Everyone looks at him with a smile. Moreover, Masa is sure that they got here thanks to fate. They have known each other for a long time, so why don't they play together, as before in the Listage? Listage is a very popular game where everything takes place in the world of swords and magic, where there are endless adventures and battles. In this game, they are all members of the Nine of Dawn, an old clan created by Masa, who is at the top of the ranking. There are 48 members in their clan, but it is called the Nine of Dawn because of the top 9 of Dawn, because of the top 9. Someone says that something is wrong here. Bishop asks what's wrong. Canon says that they got into a very strange situation with some kind of rebirth. She wonders why Masa treats this as if nothing had happened, because he is usually more careful and circumspect. She adds that if you compare this with the way he behaves in the game, it seems to her that something is wrong here. She just has a bad feeling. Bishop says he feels bad now too. Other people also create characters and talk, but there is not a single sign of magic on their faces. In other words, it seems like they're glad they got into Tesla. Canon pulls Bishop and asks that it's all weird. Bishop looks at her awkwardly and suggests they think about it later. Now they need to gather more information. It's really all weird, as Bishop reflects. You should keep this in mind in the future. It may come in handy. But right now, the most important thing is to deal with this game window. This mysterious window really looks like it was taken from the game. Race and appearance, stamina, religiosity, and other stats that matter. The same goes for skills, such as swordsmanship and spear wielding. It seems that a certain amount of points is required to improve each skill. If they start with 100 points, then they can improve their skills only with these points. He argues out loud that each skill has a level, and you can move on to the next one by spending a certain number of points. The initial strength is only of the first level. Although his intelligence and spirituality are 3 levels, perhaps this has something to do with abilities from a previous life, because he has already pumped 2 points of these stats. He says skills are an even bigger problem. The descriptions are too vague. He wonders what is the difference between a long and a large weapon. Maybe it's all in length. He argues that long weapons such as the naginata and halberd, which make cuts, do not require the use of a sword, or a blade such as a rapier, which makes lunges and jabs, does not require the use of a spear. He thinks and says that if his assumptions are correct, it means that if he wants to become a swordsman, then he needs to upgrade not only his swordsmanship skills, but also other skills too. This is required in order to maintain a good balance between abilities. He says that then you should not upgrade only one skill. Someone is shouting and calling to him. Masa says that he asked people around and found out a couple of interesting things. The first is that people here are from absolutely different places on the planet. There are from America, France, Italy, Africa, China, and of course, from Japan. For some reason, the number of Japanese people here is slightly higher than the rest of the people. Masa says that the most amazing thing is communication. He says enthusiastically that for some reason they can all speak the same language to each other, and therefore he wondered what language they were speaking right now. Bishop immediately closes his after the words. What other language is he talking about here? But then he realizes it all himself. Everyone is starting to pay attention to their mouth and tongue. Masa says that this is true. Now they all speak an incomprehensible language, as if they were their native language. He says that it seems that all the people here have something in common. He thought that all the people here came from the game, but they didn't. That's all he found out. He asks Tanapon what he has learned. He replies that it looks like all the people are in groups and they appeared next to each other when they got here. He says that, apparently, this is how it works with all other groups, although they have different connections, colleagues, friends, and so on. He listened to almost everything Tanapon said. His real identity rewritten into this world was beyond his comprehension. He thought it was a dream, but it turned out to be reality. The power of God is beyond human understanding. Masa asks if the others were able to learn something new. Voda awkwardly says that he learned about the skills. After that, Bishop was able to calm down, and he and Voda told what they could learn about the skills. Masa says they have shared enough information. He slaps his hands on his knees. He says that since the price of improving each skill and unlocking it does not increase with the level. The best option would be to try to maximize important stats and skills. He says that, as in most MMORPGs, it would be better to form a team with different roles and specializations. He asks if everyone agrees to be the same class as they were in the game. He says that he is a tank, Tanapon Damager, Bishop Healer, Elfman Archer and Support, Cannon and Voda Magicians, casting spells and doing damage. Do they all agree with this? Elfman raises his hand and asks if he can say something. He says he wants to choose a high elf race that uses spirit magic. If they don't allow it, then he will leave the team and go alone. Cannon raises her hand and says that, in her opinion, she is also well suited for the role of an elf. She wants to be an elf in the real world. This is her dream. Masa says that it is possible if Elfman doesn't want to be anyone else. As long as the Cannon specializes in magic and makes an impact, everything is fine too. Bishop raises his hand and asks if he can say something too. Masa tensely asks if he really wants to be an elf too. He replies that this is not the case, and that he wants to return to the topic of distributing points. He does not really want to specialize in one role for the benefit of the group. Masa says that then it will be ineffective. Bishop asks, what if, being a tank, he cannot properly attract enemies to himself, and they go into their backs? Masa asks if he really wants to say that he will not be able to do his job as a tank. Bishop says that this is not the case. He means that everything can be arranged differently than in games. Enemies can come at their backs and they will be forced to split up, so if they pump their skills in a balanced way, they will be able to cope with such a situation. In other words, their rear should also be able to withstand enemies in close combat. And yet, it seems to Bishop that Tesla is not a place where you can die and be reborn like in video games, so he believes that it will be better to pump comprehensively. Everyone agrees. They say it makes sense. Masa says that he understood, and Bishop thinks to himself that Masa was not happy with his idea, but thanks to perseverance, he was able to convince him to let him pump a balanced character. Although comprehensive pumping is avoided in games, he intends to pump in such a way that it is easier to get out of various situations. He doesn't need just one incredible skill. He says, looking at the screen, that he is not going to save the world. His goal in Tesla is not to save the world. That's what he did. All his data and skills. Bishop says he thinks it's a great balance. Although he said he would be balanced, he spent as much as 50 points on the angel class. Since his family is very religious, when he was little, he helped the priests, so he thinks it will affect his race. Although he practiced traditional kenjutsu, when he started playing the game, instead of using a sword or spear, he became a priest specializing in healing. Bishop says he has just noticed that the number of people has decreased slightly. He doesn't understand why some people are glowing. Everyone is screaming in horror that they are missing. They wonder if this really happened after pressing rebirth. Masa gets up and asks his people if everyone is ready. If you are ready, then let everyone click on rebirth. Everyone listens, opens the screen, and presses. Then he hears Masa telling everyone to choose Tranquist Castle as a location for rebirth. Bishop strains and does not understand what Masa has just said. Is it really necessary to choose the location for the rebirth of Tranquist Castle? He doesn't understand why he instantly chose a location after clicking on rebirth. He even warned Tanapon not to accidentally miss. He begins to doubt if this is exactly the cautious scout Masa that he was in the game. He remembers his words. Why don't they do the same as in the game? Bishop doesn't understand why Masa is so calm about saying something in such a situation. How did he even know that they would be together from the very beginning? There was no explanation that it was possible to choose people to be reborn with, as if he knew everything from the very beginning. Bishop examines the location data of the Tranquist Castle. He does not understand why he chose it. He starts shaking and sweating. He doesn't understand anything. He has a bad feeling. He remembers and thinks that a lot of strange things happened. But why did he start noticing them only now? Kanan said that everything is strange here. But even with all his questionable thoughts, at some point he also began to perceive the situation without any fears of reincarnation. He abruptly realizes that Masa is not the only one here who is behaving strangely. Everyone here acts and makes decisions without realizing it. He says in a panic that he only realized it at the last minute. He says there must be something here. He must find it. He's trying to find it, but his hands are shaking like hell. He tells himself to move faster. He needs to find something. He understands that there is no time. He pokes and finds something. He thinks out loud. Whether that god spoke about this debt, why he has improved his skill, he does not even remember it. He says that there is no time. He will remove the improvements from God's will and transfer them to the luck of the third level. He opens the rebirth location. Then Masa asks Bishop what's going on. There's no time anymore. They're all going to be reborn now. Bishop is twitching. He turns around. Masa asks him if something has happened. Bishop apologizes and says he won't be able to go with them. Everyone looks at him in shock. Bishop says that he would explain why, but he does not have enough evidence to convince everyone, especially since there is no time. Bishop says he doesn't think leaving the team is the right choice, but he'll trust his gut. Masa reaches out to him and asks him to wait. Bishop asks him for forgiveness and says goodbye, after which he disappears before their eyes. The new rebirth is confirmed. There's a rebirth of the object, which is reported to him by the system. The race of the object has been confirmed, and the selection of a donor begins. Then it says that the donor is confirmed. The mind of the object is built, depending on the inherited traits. Then the addition of a racial bonus to the object. Then the issuance of abilities. Then skills. Then there is the process of issuing a special bonus, building items, completing the construction of parts at the selected location, sending the object to the Empire of Karim, the southern village, sending items there as well. They indiaan the entrepreneur to send and kademowaterkaus. Send and an editor badier is a west. God sees Bishop's actions. The remaining group panics and Masa speaks out. God is watching them. The group also disappears and is reborn. God says pointedly and briefly that it will be interesting. Bishop wakes up in the forest and wonders in surprise if this is really a forest. Why is he in this place? He says in his clothes that these are magical things that he chose in the window, so it wasn't a dream. He says that he chose the location of the southern village, so why is he in the middle of the forest? Is this some kind of mistake, or maybe there is a limitation? He looks around and decides to go where it's lightest. He walks through the forest, comes out and squints his eyes, saying that it's bright here. Here he stands on the top of the mountain and sees from below the plain where the village is located. He left his friends and found himself alone in another world. This is the secret world of Tesla. Bishop smiles. Bishop's adventures begin in this village. He walks up to the gate and then walks in. He's sweating and nervous. People pass by him and don't pay attention. He holds onto the sticks and exhales with relief. He says it was very exciting. It was very good that he was able to enter the village. There were no guards at the gate or on the tower. But still, who knew what could have happened? His gaze stops admiringly as soon as he raises his head and sees the whole village. He says it looks like a place where they used to make movies about the Middle Ages. He looks around and gives enthusiastic responses. He says that most of the buildings here are 1- or 2-story, simple mud huts. The people here look the same as in his real world, which means he won't stand out much. A girl passes by here. He is shocked to think that she is a beastman because she has animal ears. He dissuades himself and thinks that if he reacts so impressionably to everything, then he will definitely be suspected. He's trying to control himself. He needs to focus. He calls up the menu, then the status, but nothing works for him. He tried to open it in the forest, but nothing worked there either. And the menu did not open. It looks like it does not open in a normal setting. There were some skills called Eyes of the Heavenly Dragon and Eyes of the Earth Dragon that were available. Maybe they can help him somehow with opening the menu. Anyway, he's sure he'll figure it out in time. It's time to move on. He sees and decides to ask this man. He comes up and apologizes. The man turns around with bags of goods and says he's listening to him. Bishop asks him if they have a store that sells magic books. He listens and replies that they may well be in the central store, but he is unlikely to find something of a high level there. Bishop replies that it's okay, he needs not only them. He thinks to himself that it's great. He didn't suspect him of anything, as he suspected. Magic books really exist. Magic books in this world are needed to learn new spells. And books could be obtained in exchange for glasses in that white space. Most likely, they are not so valuable because of their small value. Now he needs to find out if 1 gold, 10 silver, and 10 bronze coins are enough for him to buy them. He comes in, sees pears, some cones, and says with a smile that there are a lot of interesting things here. He's welcome here. They wish him well in his place. and asks if he is looking for something specific. He sees and says that it is so. He goes up to the seller and asks if they sell magic books here. The seller replies that they have them, asks them to wait for a second. He brings a stack of books and says that there are only those that are available. There's everyday magic and 3 different elements of ball magic. Bishop doesn't understand a bit about ball magic. He thinks to himself that everyday magic is needed for daily tasks. He has a rather strange feeling when he can easily read a language he does not understand. He takes one book and asks if it's really a water ball. What is ball magic for? He thinks to himself that he has understood that ball magic is magic for dealing damage. A water ball attacks with water, and a fireball attacks with fire. He sees one and wonders what it is. He touches and feels like he's been electrocuted. He doesn't understand what it was. The feeling is of something connected with his hand and the book. The seller explains that it is rare. He has a great penchant for light magic. Most likely, he advises him not to use it, otherwise he will have to pay. Bishop thinks to himself that he doesn't even know how to use it. He realizes to himself that this was a reaction to his great penchant for light magic. He asks how much a book with a light ball costs. He is told that 2 gold coins. The rest are also worth 2 silver coins. He wonders what to do. If 10 silver coins is 1 gold coin, he will be able to buy it. But if this is not the case, then he will arouse unnecessary suspicion on himself. And even if he buys this book, he will only have 10 bronze coins left on his hands, although he does not have a job. The seller says that even though he is dressed as best he could, he has never used magic. He sighs and says that he is trying to get into the menu right away. In a panic, he replies that this is not the case, and the seller shakes his head and says that this will not do. He says that he will probably need this book too. It will give him an understanding of the basics of witchcraft. Only 2 silver coins, because it's cheap. He awkwardly replies that it is cheap. Bishop thinks. He panicked. Maybe the salesman realized that he had been reborn, but he got a lot of useful information from the conversation. Now he should pretend to be an ordinary novice magician. He tells the seller that he also needs a knife and a towel. Whether he can include them in the price, the seller says that he can do it without any problems, and calls him to the cashier. He asks the seller if he has something to change the gold. He replies that, of course there is. On the way, Bishop believes that there are only 6 types of magic: fire, water, wind, earth, light, darkness. Even if he doesn't have a penchant for one of the types, he can still improve them. Everyday magic can be learned by any beginner. He says he needs to find out even more information. Heichi spent a little money, but he learned useful information. He can talk to people in this village. Magic books are sold here, prices for items and currency. He managed to find out about all this. He smiles and raises his head. He is approaching the Adventurers Guild. He is surprised that the building is huge. He opens the door and wonders if he can even come in here. He admits that he is scared. He sees people and thinks that this is a real Adventurers Guild. He feels superfluous. He sees a girl at his desk and thinks that it looks like their secretary. Everything is as arranged as in a bank. She smiles at him, wishes him well in their guild, and asks if he wants to join them. He awkwardly says that he is. He wants to join them, and the girl thinks how modest he is. She hands over the document and then asks to fill out this form. She tells him to ask if I have any questions. Bishop is surprised at the sight of the wooden form. He fills it out and simultaneously thinks that it looks like the paper is very valuable in Tesla. She takes it and offers to see. His name is now Rook. The owner of the magic of light, he is good with a spear. She says with admiration that it is not often to meet the owner of the magic of light here. Bishop thinks to himself that now he will be called Rook. Due to the fact that he does not know anything about Tesla yet, he will keep his personal information secret. Someone from his clan will be able to find him if he calls himself Bishop. According to the rules of the guild, he cannot harm the inhabitants and needs to complete quests, quite obvious things in his opinion. Sister Catalina says that if he wounds his comrades, they will expel him half-dead. The only thing is that the ranks are valid only in the place where he is registered. In other words, he needs to stay in this village until he raises his rank. She hands over the document and says it's his guild card, and Rook is surprised that even it's made of wood. Catalina says that the participants of the F rank only need to train. But don't worry, when he rises to the E rank, his card will become bronze. Rook apologizes for being so quick. But are there any tasks for him? Catalina asks to give her time to think. So far, there's only collecting plants and exterminating monsters for the F rank. But she recommends beginners to go to the dungeon in the south. He is shocked about the dungeon. She says that it is a simple dungeon with only 5 levels. The monsters there are weak, but a good draught falls from them. Every member of their guild passed it. Rook happily says that then he will go to him right away. However, given the time, he now needs to find a place to spend the night. He comes into the hotel and is greeted. He realizes that he needs to rest a little. The girl asks if it is true that he will stay for 3 nights. If so, then the advance is 6 silver. Rook is fascinated by the fact that the girl has ears. Besides, they move. He blushes and barely holds on. The girl apologizes and asks him for 6 silver coins. He gives in a panic and says with an apology that it just smells very nice here. He asks when their next lunch is. The girl says that now she will find out. She turns away, looks at it, and says that it looks like a difficult dish is planned today, judging by the smell. It will be delicious. The girl's tail begins to wag rapidly. Rook is in shock. The girl tells him that there is still a little bit left. She will tell him when it is ready, so he can go to his room. He leaves and thinks that she said that his room is on the 2nd floor. He hopes that she is all right. His room is along the corridor at the very end. It's dark here. He thinks that, apparently, glass windows have not yet been invented in this world. He needs to keep in mind that the level of development here is much lower than it was in his world. He stops in front of the door and thinks, it's her, after all. He opens the door and says he's coming in. As soon as he gets into the room, he is horrified that it is so tiny. Then he remembers that the girl said that this hotel is for beginners. He just needs to spend the night here. Rook pulls back the blanket and sees that he will sleep on the hay. He is sure that there are only bugs there. He flops down on the bed and indignantly tells himself how he is going to survive if he worries about such little things. He says with pleasure that he can finally relax. He just lies there for a long time, staring at the ceiling. He thinks out loud that it's really true, it was cool for him. He feels like he lived his whole life in one day. He was suddenly called upon, told to create a character in a white space, be reborn, contact people from this world and collect information about this mysterious world. Besides, he needs to do all these things without arousing suspicion. He turns on his side and says it takes a lot of energy. He wonders if his comrades from the game have also been successfully reborn. He had too little time to talk to each of them, but in any case, he would meet them sooner or later anyway. He noticed something was wrong and went without them. If he had been sure of his decision, he would have definitely told everything. He says it's too late anyway. Now he needs to think about how to move on, what skills he took. He's trying to remember. He says it's quite difficult. Maybe he needs to find companions. He reflects that he is supposed to be a healer, but still cannot use magic. So, he needs to learn how to find companions. He stands up abruptly, remembering that he has a book for just 2 silver coins, a magic book for light magicians. He says all it takes is to read it. He hopes that's the case. Then he opens the book and shouts in panic that he does not understand these words. He cannot read them. He flips through the pages quickly and shouts that he doesn't understand a single word. He closes the book and says that he's sent to understand a single word. He closes the book and says that he's flipped through the whole book and has not understood a single word. He starts to reflect that he missed something during the creation of the character. He says it's bad. It could be the end for him. Then the book starts to blow smoke. He stands up abruptly. The book falls because it feels like it's burning. The hands are hot. He looks at his hands and says that they are not hot. They do not even burn. The fire does not spread. He does not understand what is happening because the book is evaporating. Here he feels that this book is in his head. That is, he has already acquired knowledge. He says with a smile that it worked. That's how it works. He pronounces a spell, asks for light to come to him and light his way, raising his hands up. A ball forms in his hand. He joyfully shouts that he has succeeded. It is light. It is a spell. It is magic. He was able to do it. He raises his hand and excitedly shouts that this is the birth of the great magician Rook. And then he says less confidently that it will be something like that. Then he hears a voice from below, addressing him as an expensive customer, saying that the walls and floor are thin. So can he be quieter? The hands immediately fall silent. Morning comes. He abruptly gets up with a panic that he overslept, and then looks around and examines his room. He is disappointed to say that it was definitely not a dream. Even in this world, he is somehow too lazy to wake up, although it was expected after drinking and walking. After that, he went to the dining room, and the great magician Rook became a laughingstock for drinking people. In a world without technology, the only entertainment is drinking and gossip. If Rook were in the real world, everyone would perceive him as a 15-year-old introvert. They shout to him that the great Rook must drink a whole mug. Thanks to this incident, he was able to learn enough information about dungeons and various things, so it was not in vain. And today, he will be clearing the dungeon. He has a whole bag of fruits with him. He eats a pear and thinks that the way to the dungeon lies through the south gate. He needs to follow the path. He comes to this dungeon and says that it looks like it was said, but it looks like it's from some kind of RPG. He doesn't know how to say it. He says that even though it's for beginners, he's still scared to go there. It's dark and empty inside. He goes ahead and tells himself that everything will be fine. The guild secretary said it was simple. He says that there are only low-level monsters, goblins and slimes. But he is afraid of only one thing. This dungeon is considered simple for Tesla residents. Even if it is very simple for them, it can be difficult for him. He comes and sees 3 options for the road. He did not expect this at all. There's complete silence here. It bothers him. He wonders what he should do, where he should start clearing this dungeon. From the middle, left, or right. He thinks he can try the strategy of staying on the right side all the time. Or not. First, he needs to make sure that no one jumps out at him from the dark. Then he thinks that in such darkness, it is quite possible that someone can jump on him from behind and kill him. What should he do? He says that's what he's decided to do. He comes out of the dungeon and declares that he will go home. He remembers what he said in that white space. He's not a hero or a savior. He's not going to save the world. That's why he shouldn't rush. Keeping his pace comes first. So he'll move slowly and carefully. After returning from the dungeon, he enters the shop. He asks in shock if he really came back without even clearing the dungeon for beginners. He asks if he was scared at the first crossroads. He awkwardly replies that he felt uneasy, and he had a bad feeling. He just couldn't bring himself to go further. The seller tells him not to worry so much. There is nothing wrong with being careful. He tells from his personal experience that a feeling of anxiety or a premonition of danger means only one thing. You subconsciously realize that he is missing something. He says that only those travelers who can force themselves to overcome themselves and are not afraid to take a step back in such difficult situations live a long and happy life, even if he has a chance to get prey. If he dies, he will lose absolutely everything. He asks Rook to wait a second. He will go look for things that can be useful to him in the dungeon, and then he will give him a couple of tips on clearing the dungeon. Rook thanks him. Thus, he returned to the dungeon again. He stretches out his hand and asks the light to come to him, illuminate his path. He uses a lantern made of light. Here, he can see better in the dungeon. He was delighted with the spell again. He is facing 3 paths again. Now that he thinks about it, he completely forgot about using the lantern the first time he was here. He doesn't understand how much fear gripped him then. Before the old man in the store mentioned it, he had completely forgotten about it. The seller told him that the pencils and paper are in the box. Also, if he feels insecure, he can give him some potion. He thinks he doesn't need the lamp. Rook didn't understand why that was. In the dungeon, Rook now draws a staircase and a fork. He decided that he would start clearing the intersection to the right of the trail. He looks around because he needs to be more careful. He thinks that everything seems to be fine. He feels calmer than he did that time. He looks at one path and notices that there is a sharp turn. He looks quietly and carefully, hiding behind the wall. He goes and sees that it is a dead end. He touches the wall and says there's nothing to look for. He was sure there was nothing to look for, but as a gamer, he felt he had to make sure of it. Then he sees a slug, looks at it closely and does not understand what kind of thing it is. It is viscous and moving. Is it really a living being? Then the creature jumps sharply on his chest and then lands, scaring his hands. He examines it and says how scary it is. What is wrong with this creature? He watches it and says that it has stopped. It looks like a huge amoeba. What could it be? Then he remembers and shouts, "Is it really a slug?" Then finally convinces, saying that it is definitely a slug. He reasons out loud that it should all be a memorable first experience of a fight, but it ended so quickly. He would like a skirmish with the enemy to be more like in the games. He looks and says with a sigh that it seems to be true that corpses are being consumed by the dungeon. The slug disappears, and Rook notices that something is glowing there. He picks up a small stone and says, "Is this really what is called a magic stone?" Magic stones are used as fuel for magic tools, as a material for creating something. In medicine and many other places, they can be sold in the guild. He says he will keep it as a souvenir from his first battle. He draws a cross again at the place of the path to the right. He followed the path to the left after that, but it also ended in a dead end. He goes and asks if there is another staircase. In any case, the right route turned out to be the path in the middle. There was a staircase that led down to the dungeon. It is still not completely clear what the dungeons are and how they appear. What is clear is that they somehow appear with the monsters inside. When the monsters of the dungeon are defeated, the dungeon absorbs and gets rid of them. After that, various equipment, money, and magic stones also disappear. Rook says that if it were in his world, it would be a major mystery. When the lowest level of the dungeon is cleared, he is randomly given equipment there. He goes to the second level and says that this time there are only two ways. The vaults are wide enough and the ceiling is high. If everything continues like this, and he will be able to handle decay more freely. He's looking for something here and says it's not good. He couldn't have forgotten the map. Then he hears voices in the distance. Someone is walking from afar, hands twitching and saying that something is coming. He can't figure out what exactly is there. A goblin runs towards him, looks at him, and shouts questioningly, "Is that a goblin?" The goblin jumps and attacks him, and Rook is on the spot wondering if he's going to be all right. He remembers the words of the salesman, who said that there is no need for a sword. One good blow with this wooden cane is enough for goblins in the dungeon. Then the hand goes to the side, the goblin misses. He raises his cane and says he's sorry. He hits the goblin with his cane. He groans and falls to the ground with an injury on his neck. Rook stands for a long time and thinks, did he really beat him? He's already dead. He wipes the sweat from his forehead and says it looks like he beat him. It's been a long time since he moved the same way. But everything went well. He describes it green skin and big ears, so it's definitely a goblin. Rook sits down. He says that the goblin is much weaker than he thought. He can knock it down with just one blow. Undoubtedly, if it continues like this, he will be able to cope with it. He looks at his palm and says it's hard to be indifferent to it, like in video games. But he thinks he'll get used to it. He sees that the goblin is disappearing and says he is glad that the goblin's corpse was swallowed up too. It helps him feel less guilty. After the goblin, there remains a stone. Rook takes it and says that it is the same as the slug. It seems that it is true that the stronger the monster, the larger the size of the magic stone that will fall from it. Then he sees something flying. He doesn't understand what kind of light it is, and it spins around him. He sees that this light sticks to him. For some reason, he feels that he has become stronger. This power overwhelms him. He guesses that this is a level increase, and wonders if it could be a level increase. He thought this world would be a harsh fantasy. He still hears a voice approaching him. It seems that there are such simple things here, just like in RPG games, like leveling up. This gives him hope. He crushes the slug, draws, and says that this is also a dead end. Even if he can take down goblins and slugs, he's not sure about stronger monsters. He kills another goblin. He says he feels like he's enjoying it. He is not sure that he can defeat stronger monsters by training only physically. Although, if he gets stronger by raising his level, just like in games, then it will be a completely different story. If he continues to raise his level, he will be able to surpass his abilities or learn spells worthy of being called cheats. He says it looks like it's the boss's room in the deepest part of the dungeon. In any case, if this is a world with an RPG system, then there is definitely a possibility of this. He comes in and says that the boss is here. He wonders if it will be an ogre or a huge snake. He sees a goblin who gets scared. The goblin goes on the attack. The hamsters start waiting. It's a goblin with a knife he'll try to dodge. He says that while he is aiming the knife at him, he needs to be knocked out, which he does. Then, according to the instructions, you need to kick him on the arm to stop the movement. And then he puts all his strength into the punch, knocking out the goblin's teeth. He spins on the ground and dies. Waiting for the enemy's attack gives you an advantage. Rook says he expected to just stun him, but he didn't think the punch would be that good. Doesn't that mean he cleared the dungeon? He sees the goblin's corpse and says that he still can't do anything about feeling guilty. He wonders what if he gets used to it and at the same time stops finding pleasure in it. He takes the stone from the goblin and says that the boss's magic stone is bigger than the others that he received. Then he sees something on the stone table. He doesn't understand what it is. In an instant, the object falls on the table and stops floating in the air. It struck Rook. So that's what adventurers get for clearing this dungeon for the first time. He sees that it is a magic spellbook of sacred light. Then he abruptly comes to his senses and wonders why he already knows that this is a magic book for a priest just by looking at it from the back. He didn't even touch it, but the magic book of the holy light spell had already popped up in his head. It definitely doesn't happen with books in an ordinary bookstore. Maybe it's because they are somehow connected. He takes the book and says that he will understand everything as soon as he looks at what is in it. He opens up and realizes that he can't read a single word in this book. After he flipped through a book that he couldn't even understand, it turned to ashes, and only after that did he realize what it contained. Suddenly, he starts shouting that this is the jackpot. He has learned healing magic. He has a strange feeling. Later, the guild tells him that he got 4 bronze and 1 silver coins for these magic stones. Rook looks for a long time, and she asks if something is wrong, if he wants to see the calculations himself. Rook replies that everything is fine. He was just wondering if a low-level adventurer is capable of living on this money. She replies that she understood him. If this money is divided between the group, then it is quite difficult. As for singles, if they calmly fight monsters, then they will be fine, which is why single people prefer killing monsters to collecting herbs. Rook replies that he understood. He just wanted to go pick herbs right now. He asks if there are any samples here that he can rely on. She replies that, of course, there are samples and reference books with illustrations in their library on the 2nd floor of the guild. Rook is surprised and asks again if there is a library here. He made a mistake. He thought that paper was a luxury here, so he did not even imagine that there would be a public library where books would be available to ordinary people. He knocks on the door, apologizes, and asks if he can come in. The librarian sighs and says that it is very rare to see an adventurer knocking in front of the entrance. He apologizes and asks if he can find out if books are allowed to use freely here. The librarian replies that, of course, but he must be careful with them, and they are also not allowed to take them away from here. Rook says it all reminds him a little of the school library. There are a lot more books than he thought. He takes out something and says that there are texts just written on wooden tablets. He is looking for information. Objectively, he was not looking for a book about herbs. He finds a book about magic and monsters. An introduction to the basics of magic. In any case, the first thing he should do is collect as much information as possible, knowledge about this village, the country, and the whole world. He studies politics, economics, races, monsters, and eventually, magic. He's reading something and doesn't understand what it means. The basic book contained everything about the 6 elements of magic. The spiritual magic of the elves, the use of magic without spells and determining its belonging to an element, as well as a description of all the spells of each element. But there was nothing about the sacred light. All the magic books in the regular store were dark green, but the holy light spell book that fell into the dungeons was dark blue. He is talking at home, lying on his bed. Maybe the sacred light does not belong to any of the 6 elements. He has such a feeling. He read it at the end of the basics book. There were heroes and saints and even angels and even demons that descended to earth. The magic they used could destroy mountains, completely heal people who were on the verge of death, and teleport to other places instantly. It was a divine level of magic, but no one but them could use it. He chose the race of angels. It's not strange that this race can have a kinship with divine magic. But it's so strange to him why such a magic book would be in this initial dungeon. He has a bad feeling about this. In any case, he will refuse to use it in public until he finds out everything. The adventurer tells him that usually the initial dungeon gives the people who cleaned it a special item that has a kinship with this person, but only once. There is nothing here to feel lucky. Rook replies that he understood him, thinks he's probably right. The old man says that even so, it will be a very useful thing for a beginner like him. Rook asks him, Hans, what he got? They met Hans on the first day at the bar. He is a middle-aged adventurer who has illegally made a name for himself. Hans replies that it was an iron sword. Rook asks if this is really the sword he is using now. Hans asks him not to be stupid as he thinks. How many years have passed since that moment? He set it on fire a long time ago. Rook does not understand. He explains that during the modification of weapons, when it turns out to be unsuccessful and the item breaks irrevocably, the adventurers saying that it burned through, the chance of failure is so high that adventurers Dashin's house teen birching treat modification as arson. Rook asks Hans to tell him in more detail about the modification. He asks him to stop, because he must at least grow up for this. This is not something that beginners should get their hands on. He will ruin his life if he does it so, thoughtlessly. Rook says he wants to know more about it so that it doesn't happen. Hans says he's not going to explain everything to him here, even if he says so. He asks to be understood correctly. He does not say that he will never tell him about the modification of equipment. It's just that his throat is so dry that it is already difficult for him to talk. Then he understands and orders him another drink. Usually all his dinners are like this, just gathering information through conversations with drinks. A week has passed since that moment. His days begin to pass like this. In the morning he buys fruits at the market. Then he smashes the goblins' heads in the dungeon, and in the evening he goes to collect information about this world. And after the night the cycle repeats. He was soon promoted to E rank and received a new Bronze Guild card. He happily says that he did it, and Catalina congratulates him. Then he finally bought the magic book of the light ball and used it on goblins. He didn't think that such a monstrous damage was just defensive magic. He reflects that if it were a human, if he somehow entered into a battle with a human, he would be able to attack without hesitation. He began to have thoughts like this, and he became afraid of being an adventurer. Hans tells him that this is called the first wall on the adventurer's path. If the enemy is a monster, then you can somehow come to terms with it. But if he is dealing with people, then it is important how quickly he gets used to it. There are people who quickly endure all this, but there are also those who carry this heavy burden until death. And after all, no one can help him. This is only his business. Hans says that he will have to decide for himself how far he's going to go. If he hesitates, then it is better for him to stop being an adventurer. Otherwise, he will say goodbye to his life. Rook asks her how it affected him. He replies that for him, justice and guilds are an empty phrase. He has long since prioritized the preservation of his life. He says that bandits and various other dangerous people are not a problem. But he was betrayed by his friends, whom he believed, because of the artifacts of ancient times. At such a moment, he doesn't have time to invoke logic and righteousness. Either he will be killed or he will kill someone himself. Rook reflects that Hans remained an adventurer even after this. He continues to say that after this incident, he used other people and tried to drown grief and pain in entertainment. But even after a huge amount of time spent like this, he still closed himself off from this world. Rook listens to him. The old man says that although he has never stopped treasure hunting as an adventurer, he should also think about it. What it means for him to be an adventurer in general. Rook reflects that it was not easy even for Hans, an adventurer with many years of experience, to be betrayed because of the treasures of antiquity is hard. Rook asks what kind of artifacts they were, what kind of relics they were, what they looked like. He choked on his drink and is now drying himself. He says he got so turned on so suddenly that he choked. Rook asks Hans if he has had enough to drink. He replies that he has. He feels fine. Rook asks if he is serious. If he is sure, in his opinion, he would like a couple more glasses. He is treating today, so let him feel free and have another drink. Artifact is a term commonly used in relation to things created by an ancient civilization or even gods. They are always endowed with special power. If someone gets one for himself, he will be able to attract good luck or even take over the world. Many are willing to sacrifice their lives to get hold of such an item. Rook goes and says that for this he must learn as much as possible about the structure of this world. Then, he hears sounds and does not understand what kind of noise it is. He looks down and sees how they call for help. Someone is very badly injured. The girl asks for potions or healing magic. Everything will help. The girl drags the men and tearfully asks them to hurry up. If they don't hurry, then Dan will die. Rook stands there in horror. The girl shouts that she will pay them if they want to receive a reward, but she asks them to hurry up, otherwise Dan will die. The girl with the cat ears is desperately calling for help. Rook thinks that this has definitely made two things imprinted in his memory. The girl says that she will do anything. Just let them help him. The main one comes out and offers to refrain from moving the wounded. First, let them show the wound. Dan is told not to give up because help has come. The first thing Rook remembered was that death always looms behind the adventurers. The second is that even if there is an opportunity to revive the dead, it is not such an easy task. It's not like people here can be revived with just one spell, like in games. Even if he was reborn, he is not sure that he will have the opportunity to be reborn after death. Catalina is horrified when she sees the wound. Hans comes up and asks her to let him take over. This is very difficult for her. She asks Hans to do something. Rook comes up and sees that it's Hans. The girl with the ears anxiously asks if Dan will be okay. Hans says that the wound goes straight to his organs. He is sorry to say this, but there are no potions in this village that can cure this, as well as doctors. He says that the old man in the chapel is already too old. Unfortunately, he is no longer able to use magic strong enough to cure such a thing. The girl starts crying and says that this cannot be. Catalina says that she is very sorry, but they do not have the means to help him. It is rare in this village to be so mutilated. Rook thinks that Hans is a very respected person. He begins to think about what he should do. The book said that not many people can use healing magic in Telsia. Most of them are priests. Occasionally, you can meet Hiller in a group of high-ranking adventurers, but unfortunately, there can be no group or even one adventurer in this village who uses healing magic, except for him, of course. He says that he is seriously afraid of using the holy light in the environment of other people. Until he finds out more about its origin, there is a possibility that he will end up in trouble if he thoughtlessly uses it. In the worst-case scenario, he won't be able to cure him, and will show everyone the spell. But if someone asks if he will be okay after closing his eyes to a dying person, he will definitely answer that, no. He will regret it for the rest of his life. The girl asks Dan not to give up. He sighs and thinks that he has again trusted his bad habit of thinking too much. As he thought, he would not be able to give up being the main character of this story. He apologizes and says he can use healing magic a little bit. The girl is horrified and asks if he's serious about using healing magic. Then let him save Dan. He says he doesn't know if he can save him, but he'll try. Catalina looks at Rook questioningly. Hans tells him to wait and asks if he really knows how to use healing magic. Rook doesn't know if he can do it, but he has to try. First, he has to focus and imagine it in his head. He must pour in all his magical powers. He asks the divine light to come and cure this martyr. He summons the holy light and brings his staff closer to the adventurer's wound. The healing process takes place. The staff glows. The wound slowly tightens. Rook says with a smile that it looks like they did it on time. The girl asks again if they really did it on time, if Dan will be okay. Rook says with confidence that he will definitely be fine. Everyone else says he cured such a wound. He's amazing. Everyone exhales joyfully and with relief. The girl hugs him and thanks him with tears. The other does not even understand what it was. It looks like he is really a great caster. Another friend of the martyr thanks him, who replies that he just did what he had to do. Catalina strokes his cheek and happily asks why he hid such a wonderful skill from them. His hand begins to blush. Hans is shocked and does not understand how he did it, even without using the activation word. Has healing magic always been so amazing? That's right. Rook just used healing magic without pronouncing the word, reading the tutorial book and practicing using it without witchcraft for such a situation. All this was useful, but for some reason, he can't repeat it with other spells except Holy Light. A person who has been injured drinks a drink and says how delicious it is. This is the first time that a drink seems so pleasant to him. He says that he's seriously glad that he survived. The other says that, remembering what happened then, he's trembling all over. The girl with the ear says to thank the hand for all this. Rook says he's glad he was able to save him. The girl says, since it's all over, she offers to introduce herself. Her name is Mel. The guy who didn't even look behind the veil of death is the leader of their group, Swordsman Dan. And the one who doesn't talk much and who is very difficult to get along with is their archer Lucky. She says that the three of them are from Lankfurt. This place is located north of this village. Most of the time they worked in this district as a group of adventurers, and they have been friends since childhood. Dan asks her to calm down, let her stop talking. At least let them introduce themselves. Dan says that this stupid Mel has already said everything, but he will repeat. His name is Dan. Rook brought him back from the dead and he is grateful to him. The second one says that he is lucky. He wants to thank him again for saving Dan. He's smiling. Rook introduces himself and says that he's some kind of magician. He's 15 years old. The three were childhood friends, and Dan was 19. Lucky was 17, and Mel was 16, and Mel was 16. They all know that the trio came from the south to this village as guards for the visa merchant Langford. Dan was injured during the mission. Rook is asked if he belongs to any group of adventurers. They would like to get to know them. They agree with him and say that they would like to say thank you to them too. Rook says that he is not yet part of any group, to be honest. He is still thinking about whether to go somewhere or continue alone. Everyone looks at him in shock. He doesn't understand and asks if something is wrong. Dan asks to wait a second and clarifies if he is not part of the group. He's an adventurer using magic. He's seriously walking around here alone. Rook starts to think that it looks like he did something wrong. He says that it is. Is there really something bad about it? Dan replies that no. He means that he is dressed as if he does not want to carry a weapon and fights enemies on his own. Rook replies that this is not the case. He fights with them. He has practiced martial arts before. He asks again, what is wrong? Loki says what Dan is trying to say is that he doesn't understand why he would deliberately use something with such low physical damage, like this cane, and with such low physical protection, like this robe, if he's a loner. The hand begins to think what it means. He says awkwardly and uncertainly that magicians are obliged to wear robes. Mel says that the magicians of the Imperial Court, the sorcerers of the Knight's Order, and maybe high-ranking adventurers who have a group, but even so, their staffs and robes are specially made and have special properties. There are people who dress up as magicians because they admire them, but it's hard to pull it off alone. Rook knocks his forehead on the table and asks if this is really serious. If people don't look at people like weirdos and magic can be used without a robe and a staff. The old man in the store thought he was just a kettle, so he didn't say anything. But Hans and other adventurers laughed at him in the beginning. Rook asks, so the people around him perceived him as some kind of eccentric brat who wants to become a great magician. Lucky openly says that it is. Mel swears at him for being open. He is told that people who used to laugh at him won't do it anymore. Now they will think the same way. They ask him if he's noticed. Everyone in the guild discusses his talent, like who he is, what kind of healing magic he can use, whether he's a loner or already has a group. If there's a chance. Dan knocks on the table, gets up and says that they are thinking if they can get him into their group. And they are also thinking if he is not sure if he will walk alone or decide to join the group. Then he would not like to join them. Dan asks Mel and Lucky what the two of them have to say. Lucky says that if Rook joins them in a group, it will greatly increase their capabilities in battle. It is quite natural that an adventurer aspires to a higher level. Mel says she's in favor. He saved Dan. She'll be glad to have someone with healing magic. Dan asks what he's going to say. Rook says they put him in a stupor. It was unexpected, so he won't be able to answer them right away. He asks if they mind if he has a little time to think. They tell him that of course he can, but tomorrow they will have to go back, so let him try to solve everything by dawn. Rook was pleasantly surprised by such an unexpected offer, but he had to postpone the answer until later. After that, they talked pleasantly about each other and about the world in general. The sun rises. The sun illuminates the room. The ham goes down and wishes the girl good morning. She responds in the same way. Rook says that he will leave this village today, so he wants to say goodbye and thank everyone for their help. She asks if it's because of yesterday's incident. She thinks he was really a great wizard at that moment, she has already heard. She tells him that he will always be welcome here, so let him stop by at any time. Rook thanks her. He leaves the house, goes to the guilds, and sits down at the table with the trio, asking permission in advance and getting approval. Dan asks him. He has already decided. He apologizes for asking so sharply, but his answer is important to him. Mel tells Dan that it was rude. He would have said something first. Rook awkwardly tells Mel that everything is fine. Rook replies that he has decided he is happy to become a part of their group, looking forward to when they start their work. Dan says it's great. He expects it too. They trust him, which Mel says. Lucky says he can't wait for them to go together. Rook asks them to take care of him. Life in this village wasn't bad, but Rook would like to move to a bigger place, and being a support magician has its limitations after all. He will be able to learn more about this world if he works with people from this world. Besides, these guys seem like good people from this world. Considering all this, he quickly came to a decision. Dan says they are now planning to go to a rendezvous with their employer. He asks the hands if he is with them now. Rook says he needs to say goodbye to people, so no. Dan suggests we meet here in 10 minutes. In a world where he knew nothing, there were many people who helped him. Catalina asks him not to be too reckless. Rook thanks her for taking care of him. He asks her to be careful too. He goes to the librarian and thanks him for his help. Rook realizes that he was among them so little. The seller tells him to listen carefully and not forget, the most shameful thing for an adventurer is death. So there is nothing embarrassing about retreating. Not a bit, although he knows that everything is fine with him in this regard. Rook began to consider them close. He makes a promise to the seller that he will remember it for a very long time. Rook goes to the cart and introduces himself, saying that he is looking forward to working with them. He says his name is Grim. He has already received his thanks for saving Dan, and this guy next to him is his apprentice Dutz. Grim says that if Dan had really kicked his hooves off, he wouldn't have been able to look at Mel or her father's face anyway. To heal such a wound, he has high expectations for his hands. Merchants usually avoid new employees, all because new people can work with bandits. But it seems that Grim is well acquainted with Mel's family. He thinks that this had to do with his decision to let him join the guard. Mel says she comes from a family of merchants, and her parents have known Grim for a long time. Rook believes that's why she was hired as an escort. She replies that skills are extremely important in this case, but it is for support that connections and a power of attorney are needed. Rook says it's interesting. Then he hears a voice asking that it is somehow impolite. If he leaves the village, then he should have said something about it. It's Hans who greets him. Rook says that he was looking for him, but he was outside the guild. He asks if he really thinks that he will work like this anyway. Rook bows to him and says that he owes him a lot. Everything he said to him really helped him in the beginning. Hans asks to stop because he makes him feel awkward. He just bought him a free drink and he chatted with him. Rook says that it is thanks to him that he decided to become something of an adventurer. Hans says that everything in this village is just beginning. All the people who came here sometime but started their new journey. His departure was only a matter of time. Hans asks him to just be careful considering all of the above. Rook bows again and asks him to be careful too. Hans puts his hand on his shoulder and talks about that spell of his. Let him be careful when he uses it. Whatever it is, he never understood it, and he knows he won't understand, but he can draw some conclusions from it. He leaves and says that they will see each other again. Rook reaches out and calls him back, but Mel screams that they can lose him like that. Rook wanted to ask him. He just wanted to run back and find out what he meant and what he knew. But if he had done that, it would have been different. He doesn't understand why he's worried about this. It's his bad habit again. He's arguing with himself that some main character could instantly come to the right conclusion. And now he goes in search of adventures. Just like these main characters, he must not delay. The next stage has already begun. What awaits the hand and his company along the way, they travel in several carts. At some point, Rook finds himself next to the cart. He looks around, wipes the sweat from his forehead. He thinks it's understandable, but he can't see the village from here. They ask him if he thinks it will be difficult to get along with Lucky. She doesn't know why, but he is extremely taciturn. Mel says that he's always been like this. She and Dan are already used to it, so they don't care. She wished he would at least try to appear more friendly to new people and their employers. Rook tells her it's okay because he doesn't really care. He thinks Mel seems a little annoyed by Lucky's tone when he told them to switch each other. He said he was going to be the last one, so the two of them should go watch the middle. Mel turns to Dutz and asks what he thinks about this. He hesitantly replies that it is difficult for him to say. He says that Grim often grumbled at him because of his talkativeness, so if they ask him, he even envies his taciturnity a little. In any case, according to him, it will definitely not be easy to get used to him, but also not everyone will be able to get along with people as well as Mel. She just has talent. It would be very strange to ask someone to become so friendly. Rook thinks Lucky probably heard this conversation quite clearly, although he didn't say anything and continued his patrol. Even though Mel is constantly nagging at him about it, he believes that all this is due to the fact that they are childhood friends. On the other hand, Dutz is good enough because he remains so relaxed and drives the cart as if nothing had happened. Rook tells Dutz that he never found out from him why there is no official map of these places. He also remembers and says that he wanted to tell him about it. When Rook asked about the direction of their journey, he was surprised that there were no generally accepted maps and asked about it. If you remember the past, there was nothing like a map in any book. Only one had a fairly primitive drawing that showed the location of settlements relative to each other. Dutz says that there are official maps in general. He is sure that the higher ranks have maps of very good quality, but they do not show them to anyone, all because during the war, when maps were extremely important information, their publication was tantamount to revealing important points to the enemy. Rook assumes that no one has cards except the elite. Mel replies that this is not entirely true. There are people who create maps based on the stories of merchants and adventurers, as well as on their own campaigns. Adventurers and merchants always need maps to outwit their enemies, or just not get lost. Mel proudly says to let him know that her family has their own card. Rook says that, as he sees it, the information here is a very powerful weapon. Maybe the presence of a card shows his status. He remembers something and asks Dutz if he has heard of Trankist Castle and the Azal Empire. He asks the same question to Mel. Dutz begins to think about it and replies that this is the first time he has heard of such a thing. Mel says he doesn't know anything about them either. Dutz asks if they are somehow important to him. Rook replies that he just saw these names in the guild books, so he thought they were familiar to everyone. He says that he asked people in the village too, but no one knew what it was. It is unlikely that the Empire is anywhere near, so it seems possible that there is a long distance between this country and the Empire, or it is even on an island or another continent. He wonders if they are okay. Suddenly, he has brought them a lot of problems by leaving the role of their doctor. He hopes that they were able to free their minds from mental manipulation. He thinks that if they show up, he would like to explain everything to them and apologize for rejecting them. They're probably angry with him, but he would still like to meet them if possible. Telling the story of his team, the 5 of them appear in the temple. In front of them, the priests say that they appeared, as the oracle prophesied. The team does not understand where they are. Masa replies that they seem to be inside some kind of building. The girl asks what kind of people are around. They don't understand where this building is. All these people are priests. Does this mean that they are in the church? She looks around the interior and regretfully thinks that this is not what she is thinking about. Someone is shouting to greet the heroes led by the Lord himself. The man shouts that he is the Emperor of the Azal Empire. His name is Golder Lu. Let Azal. They have a request for them, the summoned heroes. One says that he has just said that he is the Emperor. Another says that the location they chose was exactly related to the Azal Empire. It seems to be Trankist Castle. Masa says it is. It looks like a throne room inside a palace. The man turns to the Emperor and asks to be allowed to continue, bowing to him. His Highness gives permission. This man says that at the moment the territory of their empire is overrun by the forces of darkness. This greatly interferes with their lives and the lives of ordinary citizens. Their oracle predicted that only summoned heroes will be able to defeat the forces of darkness. They are asking them for help in saving their country. Masa thinks about what other heroes are called. Another says that it seems that everything that happened then is just a prerequisite that they will be called upon to protect the people. The girl touches her ears. She has such a strange feeling of insecurity. Then she notices that she has elf ears. They are told that they will then explain the situation in detail to them. But for now, let them rest in the rooms that they have provided them with. Masa says they don't seem to have a choice. They doubt if this is what the priest wanted to tell them. Later, an employee approaches the Emperor. He asks him how everything went. He replies that he brought the characters up to date when they were in the lobby. He informs me that they are currently resting in their rooms. The Emperor asks if he has found out everything. He says that he has not been able to find the owner of the holy name. The Emperor asks if this means that they are imposters. He replies that this is not the case. They are named after heroes, so he believes that they are real. The Emperor says that, in fact, the oracle said that there would be 6 of them. He says that everything is correct, and they are still looking for the reason. But the heroes said that there was another person who did not go with them. Most likely, the missing one is the owner of the holy name. The Emperor talks about the absence of a saint. It seems that everything depends on religion again. The servant agrees with him. The emperor wearily says how much trouble there is. The servant turns to him and says that there is something else that he must tell him. In another world, Rook is asked if he is tired, because they have already walked a lot. They are sitting around the campfire and warming up the water. Rook replies that he is used to walking long distances, but providing cover from behind was extremely tiring. He is glad that Lucky swapped with them. One says that Rook was the only one who could stand it at first. Another asks if that means he should have helped Mel. Mel says Lucky has very good eyesight, so surveillance and patrolling are his forte. Grim and the others trust his ability to keep opponents under surveillance. Rook thinks he can rely on him too. Mel says that he can rely on her too. She has very good hearing and knows. Rook says with a smile that then he counts on her. Dan lies there and says that he feels the most unreliable here after all. He almost died. Mel indignantly says that the captain has no right to say that. Rook tells the truth that he is not sure if he is happy or unhappy now. Going to the convoy, he usually thinks that he will fight monsters as soon as he leaves the village. Dan says there aren't many monsters in this area compared to others, and usually these creatures don't leave their forests. In fact, this is very good. There's nothing more pleasant than not fighting at all and walking the path calmly. Grim asks, how about we hit the road again? Dan raises his hand and shouts that he has accepted. Rook believes that the expectation of a huge number of monsters outside the village is an echo of his way of thinking that everything here is like in a video game. Dan's probably right. It's a good thing he doesn't have to use healing magic. He remembers something and asks Dan how he got such a big wound back then. He's twitching. He starts talking awkwardly, even though he said that monsters don't leave the forest. But it's not always the way he sees it. Then there would be no need for convoys anyway. When this happens, he can't be sure if it's a wild boar or something dangerous. But monsters usually don't really come out of the woods in this area. He shouts at everyone to listen to him. They will be sharp for the rest of their journey. Lucky replies that he accepted it, and Mel says that someone will not abandon their patrol just because they missed a wild boar strike. Rook sees that they will still be laughing at him for a while. Then he remembers that Dan called them the Windy Brothers. Dan says that they never told him that the name of their band is the Windy Brethren, which is exactly what it is, so he asks them to remember it. Mel is disappointed to say that he is like that. Even if something serious happens, they have a very dim future. Rook thinks he seems to have figured out how they stand in a relationship. Rook isn't sure if Mel's hunch was right or if he started it all, but something ended the whole narrative. He shouts that there is an angry wild ram on their right. He orders Grim to stop the wagon and hide somewhere. He shouts that the ram is approaching them. Dan shouts to protect the merchants, and he will stop him. Lucky and Mel must act as usual. They understand him. He says that he is in reserve in case of something unforeseen. The hands obey. He thinks to himself. He said he would stop him. This ram is as big as a big motorcycle. Won't his brother send him flying? This monster is aiming at Dan. Everyone is watching, and Dan stands with a shield and shouts at the ram to go to him. The ram pushes Dan with his head. He barely holds onto the shield. He shouts to Lucky and Mel that now is their way out. Then they both come out from both sides and dig their weapons into the ram's body several times, causing bleeding. Here Dan pulls out a sword and shouts that he is sorry, but this is the end for him. He hits the ram right on its head. The ram falls lifelessly on its side. Rook thinks that Dan stopped his acceleration. Lucky cut his tendons and Mel pierced his insides. What a team effort! He would like to do something similar, but he's afraid to disrupt their plan. If you think about it, this is his first combat experience in the team, so it's even good that he doesn't interfere, since he's not sure of his actions. But now, he's also a member of their group, so he should learn how to react to such situations. Grim screams that another one is running from the other side. He turns around and sees a ram, shouts that it is so close. The guys are shot. 2 wild sheep at once. Is there something that attracts them here? Rook understands that this is bad. They will not have time to run up. He understands that's what Dan meant by something unforeseen. Nothing will happen if he uses magic. He understands that he has to use it. He only used it to fight goblins, but it should at least stop his run. He focuses his consciousness, gathers all the magical power in one place, and concentrates it into a homogeneous mass. He invokes magic while he imagines using a spell. sends all his magical power into his right hand and releases it. Dan is scared that the ram is already so close. Then they notice a light ball and do not understand what it is. He flies straight to the ram and then throws it out and sends it flying. All three of them stand in shock, and Rook looks at them awkwardly, as if he hadn't done anything just now. Mel happily says after the incident that the spell was just amazing. She smiles at him. Rook awkwardly asks if she really thinks that he has nothing to compare him with, so he can't judge here. In truth, he was surprised himself. Dan agrees and says that it was just crazy. Light magic should be one of the weakest in the attack. He is surprised that his ball of light was so strong. Rook says that if he says that after single-handedness stopped the dispersal of that ram, then he is pleased to hear it from him. Mel asks him if he hasn't noticed that there's a trick here. Rook surprised everyone with his strength. Mel says that he will tell Mu when they arrive in the city. If there are secrets in his magic too, then let him not hesitate to tell them. With a sly face, she tells him not to be scared and to talk to his girlfriend. Rook says awkwardly that there are no secrets here, and he thinks to himself that the secret is to show everyone such an unexpected level of strength. That's right. He decided to gather a lot of magical energy to help others. In other words, the will of the owner can have an effect on this spell. Or maybe that half angels are able to collect more energy than the rest. He should think about other answers. He would like to find out right here, but this is not the best time to do it. It's a really terrible time right now. Mel says that adventurers who can't stand butchering a monster are a complete joke, so let them get used to it faster. Every part of a wild sheep can be sold, so it has to be butchered. Dan tells Mel if she could help him at least if that's the case. Mel says that Lucky has gone to keep an eye on the other side, so if she starts helping him, then who will be the lookout? She already butchered another sheep, and they agreed a long time ago that they would take turns doing it, so don't let her complain if she wants to blame someone. Then let him just blame himself. Mel hates it. Although Mel says so, she was very worried about Dan's condition after the confrontation with these sheep. She asked if he was hurt, if he was in pain somewhere. She says that if something is wrong with him, then let her tell him. He will heal him. And after that incident, everyone knows that she cares a lot about others. Rook smiles. Mel asks, what is it? Why is he smiling after he almost threw up here? After butchering the sheep, they resumed their movement, and after a while, they reached Lackford. Mel says it looks like they were able to reach the city before sunset. Rook agrees with her and says that the sun is barely setting. He walks up to the gate and thinks to himself that he is glad that they did not dare to check them at the entrance. Mel happily tells Rook that this is their hometown of Langford. There are a lot of people. Everyone is going about their business. Rook is surprised and says that the buildings here are just huge. He really admires the city. He thinks to himself that every house is so tall. There is masonry on the road here. He did not think that it was already there at this time. Mel is interested in asking him what he will say. Rook sincerely says that this city is huge and quite beautiful. It is very different from the southern village, so he is surprised. Mel asks with a smile if he is telling the truth. This city is really not bad, as she thinks. Grim says they've arrived. He tells Dutz to get out the trunk. The cart stops. Dutz obeys his boss. Grim thanks Dan, saying thank you so much for your help. He holds out the bag and says that here is his signature for completing the task and payment for the sheep and the task itself. A lot of things have happened during this time, but everything turned out well. He's counting on him next time. Dan bows to him and thanks Grim for his words. He apologizes to him for the problems they caused them. He would like to work with them next time, too. They all say goodbye. Mel waves to Uncle Grim and says they'll see each other at the store sometime. He waves back at her and replies that, of course, he will see her. Dan says that now, in his opinion, they should go to the guild and complete this assignment. He says that they do not need to report this until tomorrow. But he is concerned about the appearance of these wild sheep. He would like to know more about them. Well, and report on the task right away. Mel and Lucky immediately agree with him. Dan turns to Rook and asks his opinion. What does he think? Rook awkwardly replies that, of course, it's a good idea. If you look at Dan's actions, you can see that he is doing a good job as a group leader, especially for his age. Rook notices something, raises his head, and is asked if something is wrong. Rook replies that he thought it looked a bit too much like the guild in the South Village. They tell him that it is. They are all built according to the same drawings. Mel says that assignments for adventurers are scattered between different cities, and adventurers sometimes have to get even to other countries. So all guilds are built similar so that the adventurer immediately knows where to go, even if he is in another city. The interior also looks like adventurers should immediately know where everything is. If everything is completely the same, then this may confuse some people, so that the color of the walls or other unimportant elements make them different. They agree with her and say that this is true. Rook thinks that the guild workers' clothes are also a different color. Dan comes up and says that these are the Windy Brothers' clothes are also a different color. Dan comes up and says that these are the Windy Brothers. They are here to deliver a report. The employee congratulates them on their return. The employee says that she confirms the completion of the task from the trading company stroll, as well as their reward for their production. 2 wild sheep. Here a pair of gold ones. Rook is surprised at such a reward for killing 2 sheep at once. Mel says that the local feudal lords give it to those who help in the extermination of hostile monsters in these surroundings. Lucky adds that the protection of citizens and public order is also the concern of the feudal lord. It would be difficult to keep track of all this if knights or city guards were also engaged in the extermination of monsters. Dan approaches them and says that this is why they reward adventurers to help them in this. It is very important for people like them to kill monsters and earn additional rewards. There are also adventurers who earn only by killing monsters. Rook says it's interesting. Dan says they're done with the report, so they can walk around the city. Rook says he'll go with them. He walks behind the guys and says that this city is so huge, there are even convenience stores, food, supplies, things from the dungeons, and ammunition. He says they sell so many interesting things that the South Village market just fades. Dan says that all these trinkets are pleasing to the eye, but most of them are just garbage. Lucky adds that a lot of things here are suitable for a collection, or for people with oddities. Rook thinks to himself, it looks like it's like a flea market. He looks around and sees the seller. The goblin sits on the ground with his goods and encourages people to come and look. All these things are brought from the dungeons. If they do not buy them now, they are unlikely to see them at all in the future. Rook thinks to himself, no matter what world he is in, the advertising is the same everywhere. He just sells things that he brought from nowhere. Then he sees the book and stands in shock, realizing that it is a blue magic book. He can't believe it. He abruptly closes his mouth, thinking that at least he didn't shout it. So that's good. He carefully examines and realizes that this is a magical book of purification. He has a feeling that he already knows its name, and even this feeling that it belongs to him, even though he only touched it. He touches it and says that it is definitely a real magic book. He apologizes and asks how much it costs. He realizes to himself that he is smiling so strangely right now. The seller starts saying a lot that he has a sharp eye, because this is a high-level book from a dungeon in one of the neighboring countries. The adventurer who received it wanted to sell this book as soon as possible, so he bought it back. But usually, such things are not sold here. He says that he's ready to sell it for 200 gold, very cheap, although he will have to leave the city tomorrow. So he would like to lighten his luggage, so he is ready to incur big losses and always sell it for 100 gold. It's a very good deal, so what will Rook say? Rook is horrified at what 100 gold pieces he has so much money. Mel asks him if he really believes his words, because it's a complete scam. Mel turns to the seller and says that these things fell to someone in the dungeon, no matter what he says, but the price is 3 silver. He replies that 3 silvers is too much. These things were bought in a neighboring country. If he does not sell them for at least 10 gold, then he will go bankrupt. Mel says that even if they are from a neighboring country, they are still of little use, so their price is small, so she can take 4 silver ones. The seller says that, as he said, it's too much. Even if they are useless, it was hard work to buy them back. He needs to get at least 1 gold piece for them to cover all the costs. Mel says with a smile that it still means he recognized their uselessness. The seller looks at her awkwardly. Mel begins to say that if you look at other things, the blade of the knife is blunt and chipped. The scroll is torn, so you can't use it. The engraved stones don't even have magical power. They're just a fake. She continues to expose all his subjects. The seller says that it should be so. He will sell everything here for 1 gold, and period. So let her take everything. Call her a thief. This is not even a trade anymore. His boss will be angry with him because of this. Mel asks Rook if he understands now. This is an example of an ordinary loot seller. He does not understand and asks again. She says that they usually hang around the dungeons to buy back something useless or unsuitable for adventurers, and then sell them in the city at a high price. Most of the things they sell are just garbage. So he has to be careful here. She adds that in any case, low-level magic books, and even more so, high-level ones, will not be sold in such places. If he finds such a book here, it will be a fake. Rook wants so much to tell her that this book was real, but he can't. He says he still thinks it was too much to cut the price so much. Mel replies that this is normal. It may seem rude, all this, but she is sure that he made a good profit from it. Rook asks in surprise if their price was even lower. Mel replies that it is, so she also thought they should make such a great deal. Rook doesn't understand. Mel asks with a grin if he is interested. If so, then let him keep these trinkets. Rook is panicking. Does she really know about this blue magic book? She says she's going home now. She'll come tomorrow to collect her share of the money. So they'll see each other. Rook asks to wait a bit. She likes to throw this out. Dan says goodbye to her and thanks her for her work. Let him say hello to his father. Rook was a little wary of Nell's words, but instantly forgot everything when he entered the walls of the guild. It was all because of the severe drowsiness that had come over him in the guild. He managed to fall asleep during dinner. As soon as he got to the room, he immediately fell on the bed and fell asleep. During dinner, as soon as he got to the room, he immediately fell on the bed and fell asleep. He lies and thinks about the new team, leaving the southern village, skirmishes with monsters, arriving in a new city, the guild, the night market. What a tiring day. He is completely exhausted. He tells himself that he will sort out the magic book of purification. He wonders what kind of curse it is. He can't wait to check. Dawn comes. He wakes up and yawns long. He goes downstairs and wonders if the others haven't woken up yet. He sits down at the table and sullenly thinks that he would like to sleep even more, but he does not want to oversleep his first day. He sees a man and thinks, is this really an adventurer? And there is light wine in a barrel instead of water. A woman serves a drink to an adventurer. They come up to him and wish him good morning. At this time, he thinks that the adventurers will remain similar wherever he goes. Lucky comes up to him and says that he got up early. Rook happily straightens up and wishes him a good morning. There is an awkward silence. Rook asks him where Dan is. He replies that he has already tried to wake him up, and in his opinion, he will be there soon, perhaps. Rook thinks to himself that when two people who can't talk to others meet, that's usually what happens. It reminds him of his transition to another grade at school. It's too awkward, so he has to say something. Rook tells Lucky that he saved him yesterday. He means that he was watching the rear. It was difficult for him to be constantly on guard. Rook asks if he can give him any advice. He will be very grateful. Lucky replies that of course he can. It's not difficult for him. Anyway, he asks if he would like to go and wake Dan up. Rook doesn't know how to tell him that. He asks Lucky if Dan is that bad at getting up. Lucky also awkwardly replies that he can't say that he's fine with it. But that's what happens rarely. Rook thinks he didn't have a team until now, so he decides. He says that he will certainly do it as a beginner. He will still have to help them with everything. Lucky thanks him and says he owes him his life. Rook is asked in a panic if it's really that bad then, since he's talking about life. Lucky replies in a panic that this is not the case. As he has already said, it is not always a bad thing. Later, Mel and Dan come up and wish everyone a good morning. Mel asks if she missed anything interesting. Lucky asks, well, what are their plans? The mayor suggests that maybe they will have a small party in honor of joining the hand. He says that he can do without a party. Dan says they'll sort things out at the guild first, then to the armory to get their gear in order. He likes Mel's idea. Rook thinks, even if it's a little awkward, to step out of your comfort zone and make new acquaintances. Anyway, it's pretty good from time to time. Later in the guild, when everyone has already gathered, Mel is surprised to ask Rook if he really knows how to use a spear. Rook replies that he doesn't know much. He had to learn how to use a sword, spear, and bow when he was young. Of all the above, it was with a spear that he handled the best. Mel asks if his father taught him all this. That is, in his mountain village. Rook doesn't understand and asks what mountain village it is, and then it comes to him. He says that's for sure. He lived in a small village in the mountains, so there wasn't much to do there. He greatly admired her magic, so he secretly practiced magic. It's his origin story that he came here with. Mel happily tells Rook that they should definitely buy him a spear, and then they will have a sparring match. Rook immediately refuses and thanks, saying that it's not worth it, he will not be able to resist someone with combat experience like her in any way. Dan and Lucky approach them. Dan asks what not to do there. He congratulates them on their return. Mel says that he and Rook discussed sparring with each other on spears. She asks if it sounds like fun, anyway, if they've learned something good. Lucky replies that this is not the case. They have not found any information about the unusual manifestations of monsters. Dan adds that he couldn't find any worthwhile errands, although even if he saw something, they shouldn't go anywhere without fixing their gear. In a world where there is no internet or TV, the only way to get information is to find it yourself, which is why coming to the guild every morning is a common routine for adventurers. Dan asks them how they like the idea of going to the blacksmith to fix the equipment and pick up the weapon hand. Everyone agrees, and they go. As soon as they finished their business at the guild, they went to the blacksmith. Then they wanted to walk around the city and have a party in honor of his arrival. Rook asks them which blacksmith they usually go to. Dan says that this is an ordinary blacksmith who runs a small shop in the back. He is not as bad as he seems. Mel says he's actually very good, and they're always well served in his shop. Lucky adds that this is absolutely accurate. There are skilled people working there. Mel says that's why she's sure they'll find him a good spear. Dan adds that, as he said, they don't have anything unusual. Rook awkwardly thinks that Mel has already decided that she wants to force him to use a spear. He passes by and thinks what a strange feeling he has. Did Dan buy some kind of bad weapon there or something? They come up. Dan says they've come. Rook reads that the place is called Gilden's Blacksmith Shop. They open the door. Dan greets his uncle, who shouts at them to come in. He recognizes them immediately, cleaning the sword at the same time. Dan says that they came to hand over the equipment for repair and to introduce the new member of the group to him. Rook bows. Dan says that this is their new companion. He is a magician and can use recovery magic. Rook says he's glad to meet him. The man says his name is Gilden. I'm glad to meet you too. He says that he can use recovery magic, which means that everyone wants such an ally in the group. Rook says that he decided to join this one on his own and did not lose. He thinks to himself that he has a feeling that he has already seen him. Mel whispers to him that he is Dan's father, who twitches from the information and the realization that they are at his house. Rook understood now. That's why Dan was so unhappy. He holds it out and says he will leave it all for repair. Gilden accepts the weapons. The father examines the weapons and asks to wait. He abruptly lifts Dan up, grabbing him by the collar, shouting that you don't even need to look at it to understand that it was a fatal wound. He says he knows this and will explain everything now. He shouts that, of course he will explain everything to him. After the conversation, the father says that he understood him. If everything really was like that, then he could not have done anything. He asks, he told him, didn't he? No matter how much they say that strong monsters don't appear here, it's not guaranteed. Dan replies that he did, so he'll be more careful. Dan didn't say anything about the young boar, but it was all done to preserve his image and the peace of mind of his parents. So Rook thinks that nothing can be fixed here. Lucky tells Dan that dinner is on him. The others laugh and ask if Lucky understands that it was rude. Gilden turns to Rook and says that he trusts this fool's life to him. As gratitude for his salvation, he can take anything he wants. In a panic, Rook says that he thinks this is wrong. Dan says that he will be glad if he stops refusing and takes something. In the meantime, he will go discuss fixing a large hole in his bib. And in the meantime, let them choose. He asks Mel to help him with the choice. Mel obeys him. Rook is disappointed to say that the price in Lankenfurt is high for equipment. He thought the prices in the southern village were too high. Rook thinks that since everything is free, he can take something. His thoughts are interrupted by the sight of Mel with spears standing next to him. Rook takes it and says that if you choose between these two spears, then it's better. Mel agrees and says that one of the spears is too heavy and will probably drag him along when he waves it. If it's not afloat, then he won't stand it. Rook doesn't understand and asks about the float. She explains that there are very rare pieces of armor or weapons that pop up in different shops or markets just out of nowhere. These are usually things like a sword, which is lighter than usual. or a shield that absorbs blows. Such things are called floats with no history of creation. Rook starts thinking about a lightened sword, a shield that absorbs blows. He remembers and asks her if this is it. She replies that he thinks correctly, but it's a secret. She says that when Dan blocks these with a shield, the effectiveness of the attack decreases dramatically. Even though his father told him so, he still does not know how to give such a feature to other objects. Rook understands. So that's how he stopped that ram then. He asks Mel if it's some kind of artifact. Mel says that Dan's shield is exactly the same as the blade they bought at the night market. It's hard to tell their specific age, so these are hardly artifacts. Rook wonders if the blade is also something special. Mel says that she has a feeling that there is something in him. She knew it by the smell. Uncle Gildan will be able to tell him more about it. The father comes up and says that, therefore, their choice fell on this spear. He asks the blacksmith to sharpen it and bring it back to normal. A man listens to him. Gildan asks if they need anything else. Let them. Let him know if anything. Rook replies that it is not necessary, but he would like him to tell him more about this blade. He holds out the blade and asks what he will say. It has chips on the blade, whether it can be used. Gildan asks to give him a closer look at it. He examines and says that this is a one-handed blade, made of steel. The blade seems to be quite good. The cutting part was not knocked down. It was made that way initially. Then he adds that it can paralyze on impact. It's not a sharp sword, but as a weapon it will do. He says that's all he can say after his analysis and hands the blade back. Rook asks if it's really something rare. Maybe it's some kind of artifact. Gildan says it's not an artifact, but it's still a rare thing. He'd give it a price of 8 or 9 gold. Rook is shocked by all this and sees Mel thinking maybe it's worth buying a new spear too. Rook asks Mr. Gildan. He said something about analysis. How did he do all this? To be able to understand the peculiarities of some things, just by looking at them, but not to be able to do the same with other things, whether he knows about it. Gildan begins to think about how to analyze the objects. He does not understand how to explain it to him. He says that everything you need just appears in his head. Some talented blacksmiths are able to understand everything just by touching an object. It's something like what it's made of, what its features and effects are. He adds that, however, a blacksmith can only analyze those items that he could create himself, even if he can analyze a metal shield. He will not be able to disassemble the properties of a shield made of leather. For this you need to go to a tanner. Rook thinks that he seems to have understood everything. If in this world someone becomes an expert in something, perhaps he gets the ability to analyze subjects related to this specialty. In other words, it turns out that other people could not tell whether a magic book is real or not, so as there is no knowledge. But he doesn't know much about magic books himself. But he is capable of analyzing them, and its name then appeared in his head out of nowhere. Maybe it's some kind of his racial talent, for example. How elves can use spirit magic. Rook thinks to himself that assimilation of such a volume of information is a big step. Dan, next to him, pulls him out of his thoughts and shouts to drink more, because it's a party in his honor. Rook replies that he drinks. After they paid a visit to the blacksmith, they showed him the city, and then they decided to have a little party anyway. Even though it was after midnight, Lucky indignantly tells Dan that he drank too much, and he replies that he is fine, completely fine. But then his head falls on the table. He barely says that he can still drink. Nell sighs and says that Dan got drunk again. It's just that when he's at home, he gets very nervous afterwards. She apologizes that it happened at his party. Rook says there doesn't seem to be anything to do about it. Lucky calmly says that he will get used to it later. His and Dan's families own shops, but they are still not rich. In such situations, usually the eldest of the sons inherits this business, and the rest start something of their own. They just have to go to someone as an apprentice or do another type of work. If they become someone's apprentices, they usually go to other cities to find a master. In other words, if she and Dan decided to pursue a family business, they would have to leave the city. Dan abruptly stands up and shouts that he became an adventurer because he wanted to. Langford is a beautiful city, and he wants to protect it. That's what he thinks. He won't let someone say something else. He abruptly falls back into sleep. Rook sits aloof and says that he scared him. Lucky agrees and says that's right, this city is really good. Mel says Lucky and Dan love this city after all. After hearing Dan's problem, He wondered if his family cared about the shrine and the dojo next to it. Since childhood, he and his older brother had been engaged in routine. They cleaned everything and practiced martial arts. He practiced a lot, but it seems that he was not cut out for martial arts, even in Kenjutsu, which he loved so much. He could not surpass his brother. He would not be able to inherit the sanctuary, not like the dojo, since his parents chose his brother for this. Because of this, he became depressed, but he found one game and it dragged him out. Comparing himself to Dan would be wrong, because he risks his life as an adventurer, but they are still similar. In bed, Rook wonders if Dan wanted to become a blacksmith. He can't say anything definite about what happened to Dan and the others. Now he feels depressed. It makes no sense to talk about this situation anymore. More importantly, today's analysis of the use of this blade, when it is sharpened, it looks completely different. He examines the blade and says, Gildan said the effect would activate if he sent some magical energy to it. But he doesn't understand how he can do that. He shouts at the blade, calling it paralysis, so that it activates, turns on. Let this magical blade reveal its powers. Nothing happens. He sits back down on the bed and says that he probably needs to do it the same way he uses spells. He needs to focus on his core. He succeeds. The blade glows purple. It's beautiful. He believes that this is a success. He wonders if he stabs someone when he's glowing. If he's paralyzed, he can be very useful. The wedge stops glowing. The hand stops. He says he should probably practice attacking it and channeling his magical energy towards it at the same time. He puts his blade in its case and says that he will have to wait until the next chance to test the effectiveness of his paralysis. He takes a book out of his backpack, saying that the next one is the magic purification book that he bought from that merchant. The book, as usual, evaporates. And what kind of spell is this? He says it's called cleansing, so it should be used against the undead. But it seems the scope of its use is much wider. Knowledge appears in his head, judging by the information he received during the analysis. It is safe for people, so you can try it right now. He decides to check on this dirty towel, tells him to clean up and feel at peace. He applies purification. The towel really starts to change. The hand screams in surprise, wow, it's just something. It looks like he cleaned it. He examines a dirty towel and says that everything seems to have worked out. It looks cleaner than when he took it from the store. He sees something falling out of the towel. He doesn't understand what kind of dust it is. It's probably dirt. It looks like it turned into these white particles and they fell off the towel. Then he sees that something has changed on the bed too. He does not understand what it is. A piece of sheet has become clean too. He looks at it in a panic and says that probably the spell pierced through the towel and cleaned out a piece of the sheet too. He thinks it's not good. He is afraid that there is only one way out of this situation. He stretches out his hand on the bed and says that he will have to clean everything here then. The magic is spreading. Then he sees that the magic does not stop. He says in a panic that this is not how it should work. He jerks his hand and tells him to stop. How much longer he will act? Let him stop. How much longer he will act? Let him stop. He asks to wait. He says it's very bad. The magic stops. He falls down and says that it has stopped working. He is in fear and says in a trembling voice that it was frightening. The spell took much more time and his mana than he expected. He lies down on a clean bed and thinks that he should use this spell more carefully. Otherwise, he will spend all his mana. It seems that the amount of magical energy consumed is directly proportional to the volume of the body he wants to cleanse. He looks under the sheets and says that, as he thought, even the hay under the linen has become clean. He buries his face in the pillow and says that he will need to fix it somehow. I never thought that lying face down in a clean pillow could be so pleasant. He says it would be nice if he could take a shower before going to bed. He raises his head and says, wait, what happens if he uses cleansing on himself? He looks at his body and says that if he tries to imagine cleansing only his skin and clothes, will it work the way he wants? He thinks it can be done. He holds out his hand and says that first you need to try on something else. He will try to clean only the surface of his backpack. He does this, opens the backpack and checks. He says it's great because the inside is the same as the stuff. It should work on him then. He places his palms on his chest and tells himself to purify himself and feel at peace. He applies the cleansing on himself, starts to sparkle, and then everything goes away. He looks at his hands and wonders if it worked. He hopes it did. His body seems to be fine. He looks at the clothes and says it's great. It's even cleaned the hem of his clothes. His robe looks like it's just been bought. He examines and says that the stiffness of his body has also disappeared, and his skin is so smooth and shiny. He touches his hair and says that the hair is also clean and pleasant to the touch. He sighs and lies down on the bed again, saying that his body seems so refreshed. With this spell, his life will be very comfortable. So hooray for the cleansing spell. He screams with joy, says that with this he can sleep in comfort wherever he is. He coughs from the fact that the dust begins to rise up. He forgot about these particles. The next day, adventurers hunt the tail of a certain rat with their swords and spears. Dan regretfully says that she ran away, and Mel screams that she is already there. She screams that she is heading towards him, towards Ruku, who is playing with his new spear, and tells them to leave it to him. This little monster makes sounds, reacts to the sound, turns sharply to the side, and with his spear digs into the belly of this monster, with the body of a large rat and the face of a boar. Lucky tells Lucky that he's good with the spear. Mel says, "Just look at his smug face. He just killed Krasling." Dan says that even killing Krasling with one blow is something. He showed a good result in this training session. Dan says that if everything is the same in a normal battle, then even if their formation is broken, Rook will be able to cope with it. While Dan's armor was being repaired, they were training and coming up with new combinations, since he had joined this squad. Dan suggests imagining a situation where they have to run from monsters. Lucky says that one field is perfect for this. They need a plan so that they come out victorious in any situation in the end. Various huge companies in his world act in a similar way. They create different protocols for each situation. Preparation of this kind helps a lot if the right time comes. Mel turns to Dan and says that even though they are training, but does he think that his phrase that the rat ran away was too lean? Let him try to speak as if he was really in danger. Dan tells her that it's no worse than her word, that it's not good. Playing around situations is a very important exercise in assessing and minimizing risks. Mel says she has seen actors in the capital's theaters often use this phrase. Dan says he also played in the local theater when he was younger. However, at the moment, Rook can't figure out how to prevent a quarrel in this dialogue. Lucky intervenes and says, how can they arrange a competition between them after training? Who will better portray a stubborn goblin, because they both fit this role? Then he and Rook will fairly evaluate them. Eventually, Mel burst into tears. After training, the hand had to study the process of butchering the animal. Lucky asked him to try to memorize the anatomy of the monster while he butchered it. Rook lies down wearily on his back. They tell him that his hands are all covered in blood. Did he perform an autopsy with his bare hands? Rook replies that he had to, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to sort out the small parts. Mel says Lucky withstands it the best. She offers to help him clean his hands. Rook holds out his hands covered in blood and says that they did not take water with them. Mel calls for water, saying that water should come into her hands. A drop appears that falls on the palms of her hands, so that's water for him. Shocked, Rook asks if she can use magic too. Mel replies that this is extremely primitive magic. She had to practice it a little. Most likely, she is too modest. It is very difficult for people who are not predisposed to magic to learn anything, and they have to try very hard so that they can safely cast spells. Their schedule was as follows. They trained for 2 days in a row, and then they had a rest day, and then they repeat. Although he was supposed to rest today, he had a share to buy necessary things for the hike. At night, he practiced and experimented with magic. He wonders how this cleansing spell determines what to clean and what not to clean. At some point, Mel starts to stare and sniff at him. He doesn't understand and asks if something is wrong. If he did something wrong, she keeps sniffing him and strictly calls him by his first name. Rook listens to her attentively. She asks him if he is obsessed with cleanliness. Rook does not understand and asks her what it means. Lucky and Dan don't understand what she's talking about at all. Mel says he's seriously clean, like he's been running around all day and also butchered a lot of people. But he doesn't even have a spot on him. So besides, he doesn't smell at all, not a hint of sweat or any other kind of stench. Shouldn't that surprise her? Rook knows he's in trouble. Dan says he thought she had found something important, given her thoughtful expression. But she was just fixated on his cleanliness. Lucky apologizes to Rook for having to put up with this pointless chatter. Mel shouts indignantly that it's important to her. Mel screams that they both should learn a lot from Rook. Sometimes they stink so much that you can die. Imagine what it's like for her, a catman with a very sharp sense of smell. They don't even think about it. Lucky and Dan are ashamed of this, but they say that at least she tried to say it more delicately. So they smell bad all this time. It's a bit like the hand of the relationship in their clan in the game. Kanan sometimes said something so frivolous that they all jumped up and down, but it always helped to relieve the tension from the situation. He wonders if Kanan supports the rest of the world as well. At this time, in another world, someone is shouting at Masa to try to stab rather than cut, because there are too many of them here. They all shout to Masa, who irritably shouts that he knows. The other one shouts worriedly that they are still hovering around them. Monsters are throwing themselves at them. Kanan screams that she is covering the rear, while the other stands in a panic and does not understand at all what to do. He's attacked by a wolf, who immediately falls in fear. The wolf jumps on him with great appetite, but he is inactive. The elf shoots an arrow from afar and hits the wolf, killing and saving his partner. Tanapon thanks him and asks where he learned how to use a bow. He proudly says that it is not unusual for elves to use a bow well. There's nothing strange about Tanapon saying that. After arriving here, they tried to find out and sort out their skills, that they had chosen that white space, and they realized that they were not raising their level at all. It seems that skills are developed here just like in the ordinary world. To reveal your talent, you need to spend a lot of time. In other words, the fact that the elf is so good with a bow can be explained by the fact that in their world he also treated it well. Kanan thinks it won't be unusual to believe that he practiced archery once. Masa shouts to everyone, as he said, not to let the monsters get into their rear. He says in a panic that otherwise he will just die here. He will not be able to stand it. Tanapon wearily says that even if he says so. Masa and the elf are silent and look at him. Kanan reflects that, in the end, it looks like it's her fault that he's worried. Kanan decides and approaches him. She puts her hand on his shoulder and tells him to be quiet. If they keep raising their level, it will work somehow. So she offers with a smile to continue in the same spirit. The man comes up to him, calls Richin, love, and asks for forgiveness. He is sorry that he could not protect him. It's all his fault, because he allowed one of them to pass. Richin is in a panic and awkwardly hides his gaze, saying that this is not so. He panicked a lot himself. He adds that, as he once asked, let him call Suzuki. This man's name is Mr. Robert. He apologizes again and calls him Mr. Suzuki, almost calling him Rishin again. He asks if he thinks they can finish. He suggests going home. They walk around the city and say that it was a surprise for them to have a dungeon right in the center of the city. Everyone agrees and says that this is really unusual. A third says that it was isolated by a large number of siege walls, so this place can be called a kind of fort. Robert says that he has just received the message. It looks like the preparations are over. They need to go to the castle immediately. Kanan asks worriedly, what about the fact that they knocked everything out? And about the sale? Robert regretfully tells her that they don't have much time. Robert leaves and says that the carriage is already waiting at the gate, so they should hurry. Kanan wants to argue, but no one listens to her. Then she hears the voice of the merchant, who tells everyone to come up. He will buy everything at a high price. This is the same merchant from whom Rook bought everything. She lays out both the weapons and the very magic book of purification. Says she wants to sell it all. The merchant says that they will try to negotiate. They all have a small value, so he will give them 1 silver piece. Kanan is outraged. Is it really just 1 silversmith? It's just a robbery, isn't it so? The merchant tells his dear visitor that all these things have no value for them. She sells them because she cannot find a use for them, so 1 silver is already a good price. Kanan agrees to this price, and he thanks him and asks him to come in again. They get into the carriage and ask where they are going now. Robert replies that to Arl, the Tomb of Heroes. He says that the remains of a legendary hero are there with his sword. They want Mr. Masa to try to get this sword. Masa asks again how it is to try to get this sword. At this time, Kanan looks at the windows and wonders what it is. It's not glass. Robert says that he sticks out of the grave of the hero, and it is rumored that only a true hero can get it. It is also said that whoever masters this sword will receive the power of the hero himself. Masa reflects on the strength of the hero. They drive. At some point, they drive through the gate. Robert says that they have arrived at the castle. At this time, Dan says that he will now explain the assignment they received from the trading company Stroll. Everything is as usual. If they refuse the assignment, then they will not have the right to talk about it with anyone else. An assignment to escort merchants from Langfurt to the forest village to the east and back. The whole trip will take a day if they are on horseback, so they will most likely have to set up camp for the night. The reward will be 10 gold pieces, and the food will be at the company's expense for the duration of the assignment. On the other hand, they will be able to return from the forest village only when the company finishes its business there. It says here that they will finish everything there in 7 days. The accommodation fee will remain on them. But for all these 7 days, they will says headed where they work their way to white. Rook doesn't understand why they are whispering in his corner. Lucky looks the other way at all. Why they can't discuss everything at the table. For example, he thinks maybe it's because they will accompany the merchants and this is private information. If the path is known, then there is a possibility that they will be raided. So Lucky is watching so that no one is eavesdropping. Now Rook understands everything. Dan asks who thinks what. The reward here is very good, so personally he would take on this task. Lucky says he doesn't mind either. The reward is quite good. In his opinion, it would be better if they could find a job while they are in the village. Mel says that everything is fine in terms of money, but she does not think that her father will agree to such a long task, although it is an assignment from Uncle Grim, so she thinks that everything should be fine. Rook thinks, so they decide only when they have listened to all the ideas. Dan asks Rook what he thinks. He is surprised and asks if it is really important to them. Lucky replies that, of course it's important. He's a member of their group after all. Dan says that he has the right to choose what Mel agrees with. Rook blushes and, after thinking about it, confidently says that, of course, he is with them. Their words made him blush a little, but they also made him happy. Grim sits down to drive the cart and says that their journey will be long. He asks if everyone understands this, so they should be ready. Rook happily replies that he understood. Mel tells Rook that he is so full of enthusiasm. He replies that after all, this is his first assignment with them. Mel says it's good that his mood is on the rise, but the most important thing in their work right now is to keep up the pace. She advises him to try to avoid wasting energy and save it as a last resort. Rook says she's right about that, so he'll take note. Now they need to guarantee the safe passage of the caravan to the forest village in the east. Their employer has again become Mr. Grimm from the Stroll Trading Company. Dutz, his student, is also here. Since they are already all familiar, you can relax and concentrate on your work. Dutz thanks them for accepting their offer. These places are getting more and more dangerous, so having a hand here is very soothing after all. He owns healing magic. Mel resentfully tells him that she understood him, so he doesn't need them anymore, since he has hands. Dutz calmly replies that, of course not. They can all be relied on in such a case. He adds that if a man or horse is injured, they will not be able to transport their goods further, and if they use the services of the church, they would simply make profits. But because of the hand, their risks are greatly reduced. So his presence here is just a blessing, as he believes. Mel says that she understood. She is the daughter of merchants. It is for this reason that the assignment with an increased reward is it true. If there are hands here, then they decided to increase the number of goods transported. Dutz awkwardly replies that they are not her equal, in her opinion. Mel says that good looks and honor are not enough to earn money. Dutz says he would be glad if she would show him more courtesy from now on. Rook thinks they're talking about how to get richer by using him, but not even letting him say a word. He looks at the environment and thinks that the trees around the road have begun to close more tightly. He should be less distracted. They are driving. Rook notices something. He thinks in a panic that it was there, as if something was moving there. He immediately shouts to everyone to be careful. There's something there. Monsters are coming out of the forest. It's a pack of forest wolves. Dan comes out and shouts not to let them approach the horses. Mel shouts to attack. She can handle them calmly. Forest wolves are quite intelligent animals. They move in packs controlled by a leader and coordinate with each other to hunt prey. Any forkworms usually surround their prey, but that's okay. They were preparing for this. Dan shouts to the hand that they are starting. Rook reaches out and summons a ball of light. A plan with a surprise attack and a breach of their formation will work perfectly against the enemies surrounding them. The ball hits them. Dan says it's great. They broke their formation. Rook shouts at Lucky to leave the rear to him. Lucky shouts that there seems to be no one behind them, but they should not relax. After that, he and Lucky turned the tables, and he went to help those two. Dan kills the wolf with a sword, Lucky easily shoots arrows and hits, and Mel attacks the monsters with his spear. Grim looks at the corpses of the monsters in shock and says that these guys calmly dealt with the pack of wolves. Mel proudly asks his uncle what he will say. Their new team has performed well. Dan says that thanks to the arrival of Rook, the number of new maneuvers and lunges has increased significantly. Rook awkwardly says that it's all because of their training. Lucky thinks that now their composition is more balanced. Grim shouts that this is just fine. He thinks that after that, he should order drinks for them all. They're glad they did it. Dan notices a wound on his leg and does not understand how he got it. He is told that he should cure her. Doesn't he think so? Rook uses his magic and heals Dan's wound. And Dan says that they now live in luxury because they use healing magic for such a wound. Mel thanks Rook for this. If they had gone to church, it would have cost them a whole purse of gold. In Tesla, if someone needs healing magic, they go to church, even though it costs them a lot of money. That is why ordinary people use this service only as a last resort. Or rather, they come there only if someone is on the verge of death. Dan tells everyone to listen, and tells him to take the magic stones and body parts as proof of the skirmish, and they will get rid of the rest. He asks Mr. Grimm if he's okay with it. He replies that, of course, if they decide to completely butcher them, it will take a lot of time. It will be easier to just get rid of it. After they collected their trophies, they threw the wolf corpses into the forest. Mel asks Dutz if he needs water. Rook thinks to himself that this is very convenient. Maybe he should learn this too. With a sigh, Grimm says where all this magic water is going. What kind of waste? Rook asks if he's talking about the water that Mad conjured. Grimm asks if Rook doesn't know. He says that the water created by magic has absolutely no impurities, which is why it is perfect for medicine, brewing and farming, and much more. If you use it correctly, you can even earn quite a living for yourself. Rook realized that it can also be used as a drinking water. Perhaps he really should learn this spell. After that, they continued on their way. Before they reached a place where they could set up camp, they were attacked again by the forest wolves, and they repeated their tactics again. They walk. Rook asks where they came from. Some kind of abandoned place. They stop. Uncle Grimm says that this is where they will set up camp. Now their job is to keep an eye on the area, and they also need to collect firewood for the fire. Everyone says that it will be done. Rook looks around and says that this place will definitely be safer than an open field. But this is an abandoned place, rather even ruins. How old are they? They seem very old. He thinks that this masonry is very well done from an engineering point of view, and from an architectural point of view too. He asks Dan if this place is by any chance the ruins of something. Dan replies thoughtfully that he has absolutely no idea. The only thing he can say is that Mr. Grimm's great-grandfather also stayed here. Rook thinks that, therefore, there is a possibility that there was a civilization here more than 100 years ago, with technologies of the same level as now, if not higher. It's so interesting for him. He says that he has heard rumors that the number of monsters in the area has started to increase. Does he know anything about it? He replies that there are exactly the same rumors among the adventurers. He says that those wild boar and those sheep that they met, they usually did not appear in their area before. He adds that just today they ran into forest wolves twice. It seems that something really strange is happening here. They're having dinner. Rook thinks that stale bread and soup are so adventurous. Uncle Grimm hopes that this is just a coincidence, but if there is something behind these, then everything can turn out very badly. He drinks a hot drink from a mug. Soon, everyone goes to bed. Rook is sleeping sweetly. Wrapped in a blanket, he is woken up and told that it's time to change. He wakes up but does not open his eyes, asks if his turn has already come, wishing him a good morning in parallel. Dan says that it is. Let him stand guard and wake him up if something happens. The hands obey. Rook approaches Mel by the campfire and wishes her good morning. She responds in kind and asks if he is cold, if he wants tea. He takes the mug and says that everything is fine. He chose a very warm blanket. Except for large groups, adventurers try not to take tents with them. Tents greatly increase the weight of luggage, and in which case it will be more difficult to get ready, which is why adventurers usually sleep with a blanket or coat wrapped around themselves. He closes his eyes and then sees the horses, says that they are also early risers. It is much brighter around than he expected. He looks up and wonders if it's a full moon. He looks up at the sky and freezes in shock. From the moment he got here, he didn't even get to look at the night sky, because the things around him were so amazing. While he was looking at the sky, he had the idea that he was thrown here for a reason. In the morning, they resumed their movement and were attacked by wolves again. In any case, they reach the village unharmed. They drive up. Rook is surprised and thinks, "Where are the walls?" Grimm says that when they arrive at the tavern, they will start unloading their goods, so they will see them later. They agree. Dan comes in and offers to rent rooms and go to the local guild. Mel starts talking indignantly about the local guild. Lucky immediately tells her not to grumble. Rook starts to wonder if there's something wrong with this guild. The guild of the forest village asks if they were attacked by forest wolves 3 times. Dan says that's right, there haven't been so many monsters here before, so they should report it above. The employee says she understood him. She says with a smile that she will report this to her superiors. Dan indignantly says that the local residents lack caution about danger. Mel says that's why she doesn't like this place. Lucky adds that nothing changes here. Usually, after receiving information about the strange behavior of monsters, the guilds take measures to secure the district. But the employee only says that she will probably go to the capital later, and the other asks her then to bring some souvenir with her. Rook asks Mel what it's all about. She replies that no monsters have been seen in the area of this village for a long time. Dan says that there is even a legend about fairies that live here. They seriously think that the village is protected by the divine powers of fairies. Lucky says that's why they think that even if there are more monsters, they won't come here anyway. Rook says that he understood, so that's the reason for the lack of walls. Mel says these peaceful fools have completely lost their fear. Rook is thinking about the legend of fairies. He thought that having fairies here would be the norm, although in that case, it wouldn't be called a legend. Dan says that in any case, they can go about their business. Tomorrow, as usual, is a day for rest. He says they'll discuss their plans over lunch or something the next day, so let them get back to the tavern on time. Everyone is listening. The Windy Brethren have one rule. The day after the night patrol is a day of rest. Rook asks who is going to do what today. Dan replies that he will sleep. If we compare them with most adventurers, then we can say that this trio is too mundane. Lucky also says that he will sleep it off. Mel says that he will sleep it off. Mel says that if he does not have a good rest now, then it will come back to him later. Rook thinks maybe it's because they're all from merchant families. The next day, Rook goes and says that he can't do anything about it, because he wants to study everything here at least a little, even though what Mel said is true. He looks at everything and says that the houses here are quite strongly separated from each other, but each house is huge. He walks through and says that even though they are now from the mountains, but this village is still more lively than the south. It seems that the absence of monsters is doing its job. He comes up to the shop and asks to give him 1 piece. The seller replies that, of course he will give it, and asks for 2 coppers from him. It's food. Rook says that he has heard about the legend of fairies in this village, he asks, but he does not know anything about it. The seller replies that, of course he knows. It is told as a joke to children who are born here. Rook holds out the coins and asks what exactly it says. He says that something like being good and obeying his parents. Then one day fairies will fly to him and take him to their kingdom, passing through their garden. Something like that. Rook is surprised to hear about the fairy garden. The seller says that it is. This place is located north of the village. It is worth seeing at least once in your life. There is also a stone column in the middle, so he will definitely understand that it is him when he sees it. He also adds that to be careful when he gets there. There are 2 rules that everyone should follow when entering. Rook asks if these are some kind of generally accepted traditions. He asks not to worry. There is nothing complicated about them basically. Just let him try to damage the color as little as possible and not touch the columns with dirty hands. Just these 2 things. Rook goes and says, if someone said that this place is worth seeing at least once in your life, then why not go to him and see? He will get there by going north along this path. He said that this place is over the hill, so he is almost there. He comes up to the field and looks at it admiringly, says that it's just fine. It's really him. It's definitely a fairy garden. He approaches and thinks. It's easy to understand why this place is considered special. Even if there is a river, forests, vineyards, and a field around it, It still stands out with such an abundance of flowers. So you can safely say that flowers grow only around the stone column. But you can also notice that they are significantly different from the wild ones in this area. It looks like there was something unnatural, or it would be better to say, supernatural. Rook thinks that no one, under any circumstances, would refuse to approach this column. He walks through a field of flowers and tells himself to walk carefully and only forward, stepping carefully with his feet. He tells himself to handle the flowers as carefully as possible and not to touch the column with dirty hands, reminding himself of the words of the shop assistant. If you think about it, handle it as carefully as possible. Then go through the colors as gently as possible. He goes on and hopes that everything will be all right. He exhales as he approaches the pillar and says that he has finally come. He looks around and stands with his mouth open in surprise. The diameter of the column was about 1 meter, and it looked like it was made of marble. Rook thinks it looks like it's very ancient. It is difficult to say what color it was originally because of the dirt and moss on it, but its ornament could still be disassembled. He holds out his hand to the column and repeats the words, "Do not touch the column with dirty hands, but it is already all dirty." Then the thought occurs to him that this is the gate of the fairies. He gets scared of his own ideas. Rook twitches and pulls away from the column. He says out loud, "Is this really so?" He begins to suspect that this is that strange ability to evaluate things, so this column has something to do with him. He thinks to himself that it even scared him. Now he no longer feels relaxed with this place. And so, the fairy gate is probably something like a checkpoint. It seems to him that this gate connects their world and the fairy world. Most likely it is. He tried to study the runes applied here, but even their analysis did not give him anything. He began to wonder what he should do. He puts his hand on the pillar and applies purification on it. He thinks that there is nothing that he will clean this column. He was told just not to pollute it. All the dirt disappears here. Rook looks at the column and thinks that it looks like he overdid it. He thinks he should leave before anyone sees him. But then everything sparkles from behind. He turns back. He panicked and asked what was going on, if he had broken something. He hides from the light. Everything sparkles in front of him. At some point, this light breaks. The silhouette of a little girl appears, who wishes him a good evening. He opens his eyes and hears the same voice, the same wish. The fairy greets him. Her name is Lisa Olada, although everyone calls her Lisa. From now on, they are now partners, and she can't wait to do something with him. Rook greets and happily thinks that this is a fairy. Then he digests her words and thinks about how it is from now on. He awkwardly replies that it's mutual. Lisa asks again if he can't hear her. She calls him Mr. Booth, but she doesn't understand what kind of Mr. Booth is. The fairy repeats and says that everything is correct. He is Mr. Booth. Rook doesn't understand anything at all. The fairy looks around and says in a panic that her time is over, so it's time for him to go. Rook doesn't understand anything again and asks again. The fairy says goodbye to him. Rook holds out his palm and asks where she is, but she disappears. He hears the voice of the fairy, who laughs and says that they will see each other again. Rook replies that even if she says so, he has no idea how to see her again. Rook replies that even if she says so, he has no idea how to see her again. Then the thought came back to him that he needed to summon a fairy. He clutches his head and does not understand how it is. He has somehow learned a new spell now. At home, he tries to summon a fairy. He repeats it all over and over again. Finally, he plops down on the bed and indignantly says that nothing is working. He cannot summon her. He thinks, judging by the name, this is exactly the spell, but he has a feeling that he is missing something. He remembers the fairy's words that they will see each other again. If she says so, then there is still hope. He thinks maybe he needs to make some kind of offering. He closes his eyes and decides that he will figure it out later. Their task was just to escort the merchants to this village, but they can't leave until they're done. In any case, they have to live here at their own expense. And in order not to become impoverished, they decided to take a couple of assignments from the guild. They sit in the guild and listen to conversations that the number of monsters around Langfurt is increasing. Another asks, well, so what? It still won't affect them. Also, these newcomers said that they met a lot of monsters on the way here. Let them take a look at them. It must have been hard for them to get here. That's the trouble. Someone heard that the trading company failed to collect herbs. Another is surprised. Then the prices of medicines will jump. Rook says that it is very easy to hear what someone is talking about. They hear that they don't care, because there is no need for medicines anyway. Mel says wearily that Rook is telling the truth. They don't have any fear. They don't even care about such things. They hear one saying that it will be possible to earn extra money because of this. Maybe, if only later, it seems to someone that a war is brewing in the West. Guys approach them. Dan apologizes for taking so long. There was little suitable for them. Lucky says they will go hunting monsters. Mel asks in shock if this is serious. Disappointed, Mel says that, although it's such a hassle to get from here to the hunting ground. Rook asks if it's really that far away. Lucky asks Rook if he's forgotten. Monsters don't live around this village. Rook says that means they won't be around. After this conversation, they decided to go on a long hunt. It took them 2 hours to get to the middle of the forest. Mel complains how far it is. Dan sternly tells her not to complain. After arriving, they started tracking the prey, and then attacked. They attacked the goblins. Rook thinks to himself that he has nothing to do here. There were only 3 of them, so he is bored. As soon as evening began to fall, they went to the village. Returning in the light of day is the main rule of any adventurer. The hunt was short-lived, but the pay was quite good. They were given a reward of 6 silver coins. They did it for 2 days in a row. At the same time, Rook managed to test his paralyzing dagger. Rook says after the attack that it's pretty good. Then everyone congratulated him on receiving the blessing. Dan and Mel joined in with congratulations. In Tesla, leveling up is getting the blessing of the goddess. He still can't get used to how it sounds. Lucky unexpectedly tells everyone that he already wants to return to Langford. Rook thinks it's weird to hear that from Lucky. Mel is outraged that he says it like he's the only one who's putting up with it. Dan says that this was a condition of the assignment. They had to be ready. He also wants to go back, but they will try to hold out a little longer. Rook drinks and looks at everyone. On the assignment, Grandma shouts at them to move faster, calling them brats. She shouts to drag her legs faster, otherwise the sun will already set. Everyone is tense from this, but no one responds to her except obedience. This morning, the guild posted a huge number of errands to accompany the herb gatherers, all because the local store was unable to collect herbs and reported it to the trading company. The trading company decided to involve local gatherers in the work, so they needed protection. The head of the guild is counting on the adventurers. Dan shows one of the ads and asks if they want to try it. Tired of hunting monsters, they decided to change their field of work and accept one such assignment. Unfortunately, their client, Ms. Hana, was very rude. Mel asked her grandmother to be quiet because they are in the middle of the forest. She grumbled. Did she really think that monsters would appear here? Her ears and nose were just given to her, calling her stupid to her, calling her stupid. Mel left first. Lucky asks to stand because someone is there. Grandma calls him stupid too, and that it's just grass where he's looking at all. Lucky followed Mel. She beat Dan with a stick and asked how many times she needed to tell him not to cut the root, saying that he was stupider than a child. Dan also grumbled that their job was just to accompany her. Dan followed the rest of them. Rook approaches Mrs. Hannah and says that he has collected some carew grass, showing his basket. She grumbles that it seems that he is only able to assemble it. He calmly asks if he should leave her. Grandma replies that she is growing fast, so don't. But with bamboo, let her leave half of it, so it will grow faster. Her hands obey her. Grandma says that, as he already understood, herbs cannot be cultivated. Otherwise, they will quickly die. They tried a lot and all to no avail. She adds that, therefore, they can only rely on nature, so we must treat the forest with respect. It's strange, but he and Mrs. Hannah were on the same wavelength. At home, Mel complains about who even suggested they change the hunt to this. She doesn't want to accompany the herb collector again. Lucky and Dan agree with her, saying that this is absolutely accurate. They look at each other, thinking that it was one of them who suggested it. Rook says he seemed to be the only one who didn't consider it a task. He just really enjoyed picking herbs. Dan thanks him for taking care of Miss Hannah. He saved them. Lucky says that if it wasn't for him, they would have failed with this assignment. Mel agrees, says that's exactly what it is, so thank you, Hand. They all drink to his health. Someone finds them. It's Uncle Grim who says they're leaving tomorrow, so they should be ready. Dan asks him, and he's already done with his business. Grim replies that they got the herbs they needed even earlier than expected. It looks like the Merchant Guild did a good job for them. Rook understands, so that's who requested so many herbs. If you remember, Dutz and Mel said something about this along the way, then he is the reason for such a large number of assignments. Grimm says that if they guys are happy with such an early departure, then let them thank the Merchant Guild. They answer him listlessly and tiredly. The very next morning, they took their belongings and left the forest village, and although they often came across packs of forest wolves along the way, they returned to Langfurt without incident. Lucky says there's no place like home. Dan says they've been working hard so they can rest for a couple of days. Mel agrees and says that he will spend the whole day at home tomorrow. Rook privately agrees with them. It was a pleasure to return to Langfurt, and he is glad that they cope with this assignment. He is also glad to meet the fairy, but something is wrong. It's like he's missing something. A little later, Rook asks if he can come in. Dan Gildan's father says that of course he can. He tells Rook to come in and asks if he needs anything. He notices that there is only one hand and asks, "Where are the others?" Rook replies that they are resting today, so he is alone here. He holds out his weapon and says that he needs to put his spear in order here. Gildan asks to take a look at it. Gildan examines everything carefully and says that he bent it a little and blunted the end. He suggests that it looks like it got into the bone. Gildan says that the silversmith will do everything, whether it suits the hand. He replies that everything is fine. Gildan shouts to his employee that there is a job for him here, and Ruku says that it will take a little time. So let him wait here. Gildan's father tells him that they are gone for a long time this time. He's wondering how it went, if Dan was doing well. Rook says that he has worked hard, so it seems that the guild has big plans for him. He thinks he is a good leader. He did not even think that there were such people. Gildan says that's how it is. He always worked hard. He talks about his son like that. He suggests that the guy seems to think that he is destined to become an adventurer. But just becoming an adventurer does not mean success. He adds that Dan still misses a lot. These three are quite similar in this regard. Of course, there are a lot of good things in adventurism, but there are also disadvantages. Gildan asks Rook what about him. He did not expect such a question. He asks him if he wants everyone to remember him as an adventurer. Gildan says Dan will make a great blacksmith. That's for sure. He thinks it's a shame. He says that he could provide himself with a quiet life. In any case, he asks Rook to think about it. Rook picks up his weapon and leaves the room. He says that even though he's in his seke, but the parental problems are still the same. Everyone wants the children to ensure a quiet life for themselves. Rook can understand it. But before thinking about it, you need to at least figure out how everything in this world works. After resting, they took on assignments to exterminate monsters, all because they began to appear more often in the district. They all look at the monster. Dan says in surprise that Mel was seriously able to track down and kill him herself. She laughs and proudly asks what they think now. They are given a reward over and over again after the tasks, but they made a lot of money because of it, so it was worth it. They drank to the fact that they had a good hunt the next day, but at the same time, Rook felt heavy and even depressed. He lies down on the bed and thinks about everything. He turns on his side with the words that it's long past bedtime. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, he hears knocks and a panicked voice. He wakes up abruptly and asks what is it. He hears his name through the door and requests to wake up. On the big observation tower, a guy sneezes. He resents the fact that it is very cold. The young man addresses the other man as Wags and asks what they are doing at all. He replies that they are on patrol and asks if he has forgotten about it. The guy replies that he didn't mean that. He says that the man takes their work too seriously and is likely to be appointed to a new position very quickly. Wax replies that if he doesn't like it here, then he should try better. After all, as soon as he is assigned somewhere, he will be able to say goodbye to this tower forever. The guy agrees with him. He thinks out loud that he might need to learn to read and write. He's interested in the opinion of a friend. Noticing that he does not respond, the guy turns his head in his direction and calls out to him. He doesn't have time to ask a question, noticing his worried face. Wags talks anxiously about some kind of smoke. He sees a huge horde of monsters far away on the horizon and shouts about it. The man tells his friend to ring the beige bell. He immediately does this, but the man shouts that he should call Beige and asks what he is doing. The guy agrees and says that he is already calling. Wags shouts about the beige bell again and the young man says he understood. A lot of people are standing in the room. One dark-haired guy turns to the other and says he came running as soon as he could. They also ask what exactly happened. Dan apologizes to him and starts explaining. He asks if he heard 2 bells ringing and says it's a sign of alarm. After all, the first bell means that someone is approaching the gate, the second one means that the whole city is in danger. The young guy clarifies that this means that something capable of destroying the city is approaching the gate. Dan says it's like that. He also says that at such moments, adventurers usually gather in the guild. Suddenly, a man from above, on the balcony, asks for silence. He says he will explain the situation now. He introduces himself as Woot Darren, the guild owner, and says they don't have much time. So he will say briefly that right now, a huge herd of monsters has been discovered in the northwest. He said that he's moving from the mountains to the northwest and will pass by. However, several small groups have separated from him, and they are heading towards the city. They'll reach the city in half an hour, so they don't have time to evacuate. Woot says they probably already know, but he'll repeat it. When monsters gather in such herds, they go into a bloody rage. Hundreds, thousands, sometimes even more than 10,000 monsters in one pack. In other words, they will destroy the city in no time. The man says that the Lord himself sent an order to the guild. Protect the western gate. They are still negotiating, but they can all expect a reward. They can also count on a surcharge depending on the volume. Work. The best ones will receive the recognition of the Lord himself, and they will also be able to increase their guild rank. Woot Darren asks them if they understood everything, and says that this opportunity comes only once. He also tells them to try to stay alive, but under no circumstances let them break down the gate. Otherwise they will fill the whole city and it will be bad. He says that protecting the gate is the only option to prevent this, and that those who are ready should go to the west gate. A very young guy talks to himself about how bad everything is. He had heard of such hurdy before, but the reality was much worse. After all, any wrong move can cost human lives. However, the guy is thinking about how the owner taught his speech. He made it clear that there was nowhere to run, and then switched to possible advantages. Thanks to this, he deliberately chose the words so that the adventurers would definitely not run away. There was a commotion in the hall. Some girl asks what they should do. The guy next to her asks if they should just leave. Another man next to them says that the city is the safest place. The guy with the cat ears says that you need to train your defense. His friend says that we need to train your defense. His friend says that we need to end this completely. The young man next to me says that getting into the ranks of the guards is no longer such a dream. The guy thinks to himself that he feels 2 different points of view from local and non-local adventurers. The crowd is shouting that it's time for them to go to the gate. The guy thinks about himself and his friends. His friend says that they need to move to the gate and asks if everyone is ready. Everything is quite expected here. The young man asks where Mel is. I noticed that she never came. The guy answers him that, most likely, her father did not let her go. Lucky says she's probably very angry right now. He hopes she doesn't have a spear with her right now. Rook laughs and says he imagines her expression. Woot asks him to listen. He says that monsters are divided into waves depending on their speed, which means that they will attack in a certain order. He urges them to aim only at those who are close to the gate, and says that they will not be able to avoid touching the monsters that will bypass the city. People drive stakes into the ground. He also tells them not to relax after reflecting the first wave, because stronger monsters will arrive with the next waves. Men are building a mound for the tower. The man says that now those who can use attacking magic and arrows must climb the wall. Those who can create stone barriers should build a wall in front of the gate as quickly as possible. And those who attack in the vicinity should help in creating barricades. Dan wishes Lucky and a hand of luck. Lucky says they'll figure it out, and Rook says they'll do their best. The guy climbs the wall. The young man is a little worried about what is happening. But judging by the behavior of Lucky and Dan, everything should go smoothly. Suddenly, the guy freezes in great surprise. He looks into the distance. The rising dust and trembling caused him to panic a little. All his naive expectations were dashed. It feels like an earthquake or typhoon. No one can cope with such energy. People are building stone walls below. But can something like this deter such an attack? The young man is convinced that he does not. It's just not possible. It's unrealistic. He can feel it in his gut. The guy is panicking. Woot shouts that the first wave is coming. This is a huge gathering of forest wolves. There will be about 200 or 300 of them. He says that everyone should go back outside the gate, and that it should be closed as soon as everyone returns. The gates are closing. He tells everyone to take up positions and prepare for an attack. He tells the archers to aim at the front ones, because this will cause confusion, and that if everything goes smoothly, they will easily cope. He shouts for them to aim at the front of the herd and fire at the same time at the signal. After all, the monsters are coming. The archers pulled the bowstring, ready to shoot. Woot says, "Everyone get ready." Some guy is casting a spell, telling the fire to come and burn his enemies. The girl next to him tells the water to wash away her enemies. The man asks the fire to incinerate his enemies. And another man is already ordering the wind to slay his enemies. Rook puts his hand on his chest and, holding out the other one forward, says that the color has come and struck his enemies. The monsters are coming. The guild owner shouts for them to aim. The young man is worried. The girl next to her prays to herself and asks God to help them. The young man asks where the shots are. Another man is very scared. The wolves are almost at the gate. The head of the guild is shouting at everyone to shoot you. Everyone is shooting and arrows are flying at the enemies. What did people say before that? Spells release their attacks. The man who called for fire attacks with a fireball. The girl next to him releases a water arrow. A man shoots a fiery arrow, and another man throws a whirlwind. The hand releases a ball of light. All attacks fly at the monsters and hit them. Explosions are heard. The man says to shoot at the dust cloud again. He orders the archers to take care of those who strayed from the group. All the people are repeating their spells again. Gunshots and explosions are heard again. A lot of monsters have been killed. The man shouts that everything is fine and that they should continue in the same spirit. When the monsters stopped advancing, he says that it's over and that we need to stop the fire. The man on the observation tower says that the first wave was almost completely destroyed and no one else is coming. Woot shouts that everything is fine and it's a good job. He tells the magicians to regain their strength, the archers to replenish their quivers, and those who are free to strengthen the barricades. The hand is asked if he is okay. The young man thinks to himself that they have coped and smiles. Dan says they've done it. Lucky asks if he wants to eat, but he answers positively. But they say that there's nothing with him. Dan takes out a piece of beef and tells them to take it. Lucky and Rook are eating. One of the young men asks if he is sure, because this is food for emergencies. Dan replies that the last resort will come if he and Lucky don't eat. Rook agrees and says that it will be better for him. He is eating. But suddenly he pays attention to a conversation between two people from below. One asks the other loudly what this means, and then wonders if the Lord even understands the current situation. The man shouts that they promise to help protect the Western Gate, but they will not last without supplies. Another man says they also need these supplies to protect the North Gate. He says that he has heard that the guild has its own supplies and offers to use them himself. Woot says that, of course, they have them, but their volume is very limited, and they simply won't have enough. After all, they don't even know how long the monsters will attack. Dan says that even now they are continuing this whole farce, and Rook is interested, asking his friend about the farce. Lucky explains to him that the Lord is partially financing the guild due to the killing of monsters and more. That is why the guild cannot reject his petition completely. So he takes advantage of it and demands her selfless help. However, Dan says that adventurers are free to make their own choices, and that usually the guild fills its own needs. But, as they expected, it became more difficult now, and the head of the guild had to allocate large funds from his pocket. About myself. Rook suggests that this is why he encouraged the adventurers to work as a team. After all, if you think about it, lords, there must be a lot of supplies. Well, if he doesn't help them, then it will be worse for him. So there's no way he can leave the West Gate. Den says that although even in such a situation, the Lord is trying to force the guild to go bankrupt. Rook says that I now understand what all this is about. The man continues to argue. One of them shouts that if they strengthen the Northern Gate, then their gate will fall. Then everything will end. A lack of resources can turn into a disaster. The second replies that he will convey his words to the Lord. The head of the guild says that the Lord still refuses to pay for supplies. He wonders if the Lord understands the consequences of the fall of the Western Gate. He runs the other over his head and sees his hair in the palm of his hand. Speaking of which, suddenly he is hailed. He's wondering what happened again, with tears in my eyes. One of the girls, in order to block the way for people, turns to him, pointing out the behavior of these people. The man with the eye patch says he can't even go back to the winery. The girl next to him says she's almost out of arrows. The other man shouts that he spent half of his mana on this battle, and asks what he should do now. Another man in a helmet shouts in displeasure that they don't even have food, and he hasn't eaten since this morning. The head of the guild says that he is sorry to say this, but the Lord asked to transfer supplies to the northern gate, but they have already requested help from the merchant guild, so people need to wait a little while for her to come. People are extremely unhappy. Someone in the crowd exclaims questioningly. Dan is unhappy, says that this is a bunch of stingy people. Rook asks him again. Dan is unhappy, says that this is a bunch of stingy people. Rook asks him again. The guy says that adventurers who come from other cities or countries think only about gold or rewards because they are not interested in the lives of ordinary citizens at all. He also says that they refuse to cooperate unless the head takes care of their comfort, and that they are very cunning. He can't believe they didn't even prepare. Dan points at the archer and says that she complains about the lack of arrows. He agrees and says that there are fewer of them, but she used attacking magic mostly. Then he turns his attention to the man who complained about the lack of food, but his whole hit bag is full of different ingredients. The others are exactly the same. Rook privately agrees with his friend. While he also notes that as an adventurer who is always in danger, he can partially understand him. He remembers a man who says he's missing something. Suddenly, someone shouts that the second wave is coming. The guy is surprised that it is already starting. Dan is leaving. They say that the second wave is already near and it's time for him to go. Rook agrees. He tells Den and Lucky to be careful. Rook looks at the horizon again and sees monsters approaching. After what he saw, he feels a little pessimistic, but hope that they will succeed. He stares resolutely ahead, thinking to himself that he needs to concentrate. He says they will do it. The head of the sleeve shouts that the second wave is advancing. A huge flock of sheep. He says there are 300 of them. They are rapidly approaching the gate. He tells everyone takes aim, and then gives the go-ahead to fire. The attacks are flying at the monsters again. A water step and a fireball hit the rams. The balloon hits the monster. Arrows also find their target. The fire arrow destroys monsters. Rook is very tired. He can't catch his breath, but they're still producing the spell. Suddenly, one of the monsters jumps through. He crashes into a stone wall. Wood is surprised and asks how they break through the stone wall. The girl with the ears performs a water ball spell. The man next to her leaves the fire arrow. The hands are attacked with a light ball again. Attacks land on monsters again and hit them. Rook is trying to catch his breath. They finally repelled this attack. The guy is lying on the ground. He had absolutely no strength left. Woot orders the earth mages to repair the stone wall as soon as possible, and the attacking units must replenish their supplies of potions to restore health and mana. Suddenly, someone asks Rook if he's okay. Mel, hovering over him, asks if he will have a potion. He is surprised by her and calls out to her. He asks her if she shouldn't be at home. The girl says that she can't stay at home obediently at such a time, and that she ran away unnoticed. She also says that her father took her with a spear. Well, she stole some goods instead. The girl slaps the bag and informs him that half of it is a donation from Gurm, so he can take as much as he wants. The guy wonders if she won't get anything because she took so much. Mel says not to worry because while the city is in chaos, there is absolutely no time for trade. She gives him a bottle of potion and says that she is giving them to everyone now so he can take it and heal. Rook thanks the girl. As she leaves, she says that these potions contain medicinal herbs collected by that granny. Rook says goodbye to her and wishes her luck. Mel moves on. Nat turns to his comrades and tells them to replenish their supplies. The Malbus company has a table, because they have a potion, and there is food for the hungry. The guy looks at the vial in his hand and says that it was the herbs of that time. He drinks the bottle, saying that he drinks to Hannah and Gurm. They only had to deal with the second wave, after the first. Rook hears the people outside the gate erecting stone walls. He's scared of something. He feels that something is going on. A chill runs through his body. An unexpected man from the tower shouts that an incredibly huge third wave of monsters is coming. Woot does not believe this and asks again. The excited lookout shouts that it is presumably a B-rank monster, a large boar. The head of the guild asks again and asks how this can even be. He shouts for everyone to prepare for a retaliatory attack, and the Earth Magician orders to build stone walls as high and thick as possible. He says that they should send an order to the Baron as soon as possible and request reinforcements, and also says that they should properly strengthen the barricades inside the gate and begin evacuating the residents. Closer to the west gate, he thinks to himself about what else they will need, but stops himself and asks what they should do with the boar first. After all, there are no adventurers in this city who can subdue a monster of rank B. Apparently, they can only throw magic and arrows at him and rely on adventurers of rank C. He scratches his head again and is indignant, asking why this is happening. When exactly does he work as a guildmaster? He looks at the hair on his arm again, and again they are indignant. The man squeezes his hand and removes it along the partition, cursing the monster. He turns to other people again and says that there are enough stone walls. The man urges them to finish the construction and take the army. He shouts that everyone needs to be ready and that their target is a big boar and you can shoot anywhere. It doesn't matter, because the main thing is to stop him. Otherwise, he will cause a pogrom. About myself. Rook reflects on the words of the head of a guild that you can shoot anywhere. He asks himself if the monster is too healthy. The guy notices that he looks more than 4 meters at the withers, and that he is almost as big as the western gate, much taller than an elephant. The guy asks himself if they will remain intact after his attack. Woot gives the order to shoot again, and everyone attacks the big monster. A lot of attacks hit the boar. Woot rejoices, looking at the cloud of dust, and tells this monster to get. However, a moment later, the monster is still rushing towards the gate. The guild head is concerned that it didn't work. The monster destroys the stone walls and crashes its horn into the gate. The wooden gate cannot withstand the onslaught, and the monster ends up inside. Woot exclaims in fright. The monster destroys the observation tower with one blow of its hoof. The head of the guild calls him a beast in fear. He asks the adventurers why they are frozen, and tells them to surround him with sea-crank adventurers and drive him into a dead end. In this case, he will not be able to accelerate and smash everything around. He also says that the papers and the archers tried to shoot at the same time. Dan agrees and tells him to get started. The man next to her responds positively. He tries to hit him with the cursed sword, but sees that it is useless and says that the cursed sword does not take him. Arrows are also powerless. Someone says the arrows don't even go in. Root shouts at them not to let him break further into the city. He also orders the guards to restrain him and push him back. One of the adventurers is outraged and asks what magicians do in general. Dan responds by telling him that magic can hit them, so they don't shoot. Suddenly, a voice familiar to the girl was heard from behind the guy. He was told to leave a gap. He turned around. He called out to Mill, surprised. She engages in battle with a spear of supplies. Dan is a questioning exclamation point when a girl attacks a monster. She manages to break through his defenses, and the monster screams. He's throwing people away. They scream in surprise. The monster continues to advance. Root calls on the shields to stop him. However, the people with shields are too scared and trembling. Suddenly, a man in a helmet and with a shield appears in front of Dan and tells them to rely on him. He turns to the monster and tells him to come here. He also says that an adventurer of the rank of S. Gans puts him with one left hand. The guy screams at him that he's crazy. The monster is advancing rapidly. He slams into the man's shield with all his might. But the one with the belligerent cry does not let him go any further. Rook is surprised that he seriously stopped him. An adventurer with a rank does not even have time to ask a question. Suddenly, the boar lets him fly. All the adventurers are surprised. Rook thinks to himself that this adventurer almost did not run away, but in an instant, he managed to stop the attack of the big boar. He wonders at the strength of the sea crank adventurer and makes the assumption that he may have been blessed by the goddess several times. Root commands that the adventurers now press on him and eventually squeeze him in a vice. Rook believes that the situation has not changed at all. The head of the guild commands to hold the boar from all sides and not allow him to aim. The young man thinks to himself that if the battle of attrition continues like this, then because of the difference in strength, they will be the first to surrender. He notices that Gelmas is no longer screaming, because he is at a dead end. He wonders to himself and cannot believe that there is no way out. He's thinking of a way to weaken the big boar somehow. Suddenly, an idea comes to him. They may not be able to weaken him, but his movements may well. The guy doesn't really believe that this will work. The guy notices a breathless friend and calls out to him. He believes that there is no time for doubt now. If there is the slightest opportunity, it should be used. He climbs onto the remains of the observation tower and reaches for the dagger. This is his last hope. He pulls out a stun knife and jumps down. He shouts that this is his last chance and plunges a cold weapon into the boar's back. One of the adventurers asks him what he is doing and if he is in a hurry to die. Another adventurer nearby shouts for him to get off quickly. The young man is trembling with fear. Someone is shouting at him to run away and save himself. Rook looks at the knife and says that just a little more. The boar shakes it from side to side. The guy asks him to finally act. He screams for the knife to work. He asks for at least a little effect. He's begging hard for it to work. Suddenly, a glow appears. Whether a desperate blow will bear fruit, the main character cannot say a word out of fear. The adventurers below ask what kind of glow it is and make the assumption that it is a magical item. Rook screams in fear. And when the monster falls, he also cannot hold on to it and falls. The boar is defeated. Mel runs to Rook and calls out to him. The guy screams that he is not dead yet but simply paralyzed, but his strength leaves him and he loses consciousness. Mel screams his name. On my last legs. Rook thinks it helped. The first thing he sees when he comes to is Mel. He's humming. She asks him if he's okay. He says he thinks he's fine. The girl is very happy about this and exhales with relief. She hands him a bottle of potion and tells him to drink it. Rook thanks her and asks about the boar. The girl points her finger at him and tells him to make sure for himself. He sees a defeated monster and people rejoicing. Mel says that Uncle Dwarf killed the monster by chopping off its head with his giant axe. Shortly after all this, a message came from the scout tower that the monster attacks were over. Cheers began to come from the west entrance, which had been a battlefield not so long ago. Dan is happy and says that they did it by addressing the hand. They defended this city with their own hands. Lucky says there are no serious casualties either, and this is a perfect victory, so to speak. Few say that in the end, they did their best. Rook agrees. The girl asks him if he could not be happier because they managed to protect this city on their own. The main character smiles and says that he is very happy about it. Mel, make the assumption that after this, the Wynn brothers will definitely become famous. Lucky says he has never heard of any other team of adventurers being able to defend their city alone. Dan agrees and says that this incident was undoubtedly a blessing in disguise. He also adds that the number of tasks they will receive will definitely increase after that. At that very moment, Rook realized something about what was behind the unpleasant feeling he was experiencing, as is the true meaning of Gildanasan's words. Dan put his hand on his shoulders. The crowd cheered. Someone said he was great. Rook is shy and tells Dan to stop. However, Dan answers in the negative and says that they should tell people that today's hero is from the Wynn Brotherhood, and wonders if he understands him. Someone in the crowd shouts that they will definitely buy him ale later. The main character is still talking to himself about what he should probably say, that if he had it, he is a heady, and no, that he had it's handmade. Blushing, a beautiful girl hugs his arm and asks him if he wants to join them instead. Mel is outraged from behind. He had realized this a long time ago, but pretended not to notice. All this is due to the fact that he is very comfortable here. The kissed hand smiles shyly. For several days after that, people were busy repairing around the gate, as well as hunting down the remaining monsters that were still loitering around the city and the highway. Rook and another man are carrying logs. At the same time, the main character was thinking how to tell his friends about what was on his mind. Woot says they are very sorry that they were delayed in giving him the award. He also says that this time the reward will be about 30 gold coins per person. He says the Lord said he was late, because first you need to calculate the fee for the repair of the castle gates of the city and the highway. In addition, they were informed that a humanoid-type monster or something like that was also appearing at the north gate. He says that in any case, Whatever the truth, in fact, it seems that they are very unhappy that we alone cope with a huge bore. The adventurers are smiling cheerfully. The head of the guild urges them not to worry. They are told that they have also invested from the guild to make sure that they receive the promised rewards. He also says that if there is one of them who is unhappy with this, he can report his complaint to the guild, and they will make sure that this problem is resolved. The man says that anyone who has complaints can come to them later. Lucky says that no one will complain after hearing the words of the guildmaster. He also asks if she thinks he's getting less and less hair. Mel says she heard from her father that he argued a lot with the Lord about this. Dan asks them what, in that case, is a token of gratitude to the guildmaster for this award. Maybe they can treat him to something delicious for dinner. Mel says it's a good idea, and in that case they can leave the gear at her house. A food stall. Dan says that, as he thought, the food they serve is much tastier. Mel answers in the negative and says that it only seems to them. Lucky says that if you forget about the taste, they can eat as much as they can tonight. Dan suddenly speaks up and asks if they've decided what they're going to spend their money on. Lucky says he's still thinking about it, but he'll probably buy himself a better bow. The girl says she wants to order new equipment because she found a pretty good fabric. Dan turns to Rook and asks what he has decided. The guy replies that he has already decided something. Well, before that, he wants to ask his friends one serious question. He says it's about their future. He asks if they have any ideal or adventurer lifestyle that they would like to live. Dan wonders why he's asking this so suddenly. Mel replies that, like all normal adventurers, the guy across from him asks what he's getting at. The main character says that he just wants to understand the purpose of the adventurers and gives an example of what exactly their group will do from now on. That's what he wants to know. Dan says that he currently wants them all to reach the C rank to begin with, and then he would like to explore the depths of the nearest forest. He also adds that, if possible, he wants them to be strong enough to easily solve the problems of the city, as in the case of the huge boar. About myself. Rook thinks he should have known that, and should have guessed. He asks them if they thought about moving to another city or something like that. He adds that he means that they can easily become stronger if they go to the city. With a dungeon, for example. Dan replies that he doesn't think he's going to leave this place anytime soon. He means that they can still grow and hone their skills here after all. He also says that, besides, his whole family and all his friends are in this city, and he just doesn't see the point in leaving them all and moving to a completely new place. Mel says she doesn't think her father would let her do that, even if he went to look for guards in another village. He's already making a disgruntled face. However, the main character says that he does not like it, and he wants to see other places and countries. He wants to explore old ruins and legendary places if possible. Go to the dungeon too. Rook says he wants to explore this whole world. Lucky says that he did what he thought he would do, and that he really said it. Rook addresses him by name, wanting an explanation. Lucky says that vaguely, but he felt that he was not one of those who would stay in one place. He turns to the others and asks if they have understood this. Dan responds positively, because they are together almost every day. Mel also responds positively and says it was pretty obvious. There was silence at the table. Dan says that in his opinion, there are two types of adventurers. Those who just want to fill their bellies, and those who strive for a goal. He turns to the hand and says that he is definitely one of the latter, so he should go ahead and see the world. Because of them too, Rook addresses him by name. Mel thinks it's best for him. Lucky agrees. Sadrook calls them by name. The girl tells him not to make such a face and asks him if he does not know that it is better to smile at such moments. He says that with that said, it's time to celebrate their success in repelling the attack, as well as a new journey. Arm. They're banging mugs. He says that's right and asks them to bring more. All. Dan says he's had too much to drink. The guys are joking and laughing. Mel is outraged that she could have lost her hand. Whatever happens next, Rook will never forget the days he spent with them. Roka says he has meat. Lucky says with displeasure that this is his meat. The first party he has been a member of since he came to this world. Even if they have to break up now, their friendship will never disappear. Rook is walking, leaning on Mel. The girl asks him if he can go. He replies that he is fine. Dan and Lucky are walking behind them. Dan asks an anatomical question, asking if he wants to explore the world. He says he never even thought about it. And then they add that he's really incredible for someone younger than him. Dan recalls that moment with the boar and says that when they ran into him, in truth, his legs stopped obeying him, even though he should have been able to handle it alone, with his shield. But on the other hand, Rook was brave enough to challenge this boar with just a knife. At the same time, he stood rooted to the spot with his shield. Lucky asks him if he knew Rook was smiling. He says he saw the guy smiling as he charged at the huge boar, as if he was enjoying a situation where life or death was at stake. He then adds that at least this is what he saw at that moment. He also says that perhaps it is people with such courage as Ruka who become famous adventurers. By finding some hidden artifacts or undiscovered ruins, Dan thinks to himself about the famous adventurer. Now that he thinks about it, he is not an adventurer who lives only to fill his belly, and not someone who aspires to the top. He's just a man who turned his back on reality. The one who ran away from blacksmithing, but still clings to his friends in Langford because he is afraid that they will leave him all alone. He's just a man who became an adventurer only to escape. After all, he's just another half-baked bum. Having made a conclusion, he says that he will talk to his dad later. Day. Friends and acquaintances see off the hand. He is told that his card is about to leave. Rook agrees. The guy wants to wish them something, but they don't let him finish. The man asks him to protect himself, and the other person next to him, Tecaltum, tells him not to forget about them. Dan advises him not to eat more than he should live, and Lucky says that he's looking forward to hearing his name from other places. Mel smiles and says that he must remember that he can always return to this city. She also wants to do one last thing. The girl kisses him on the cheek. The hand turns red. She tells him to be careful with bad women. The main character agrees. He thinks to himself that this is probably his last breakup with these guys. He means that there's no smartphone or internet in this world, and letters are rarely delivered to this city. In that case, it's probably the last time he sees these people. He looks at his friends, who wave after him. When he thinks about it like that, he is suddenly overwhelmed by feelings of loneliness. He smiles and waves back at them. He will not regret this decision, because I have already decided to look only forward. They're riding in a wagon. The mountains are visible from the window. An unknown grandmother with a smile on her face asks where he is going. He clarifies whether he has been asked a question, and says that he will go to Raglake for now, and then, perhaps, go to Nurnheim or somewhere else. It was quite disturbing for him to decide where to go next. Either he should go to the forest village, or towards the village of Killet, which is closer to the capital. He remembers the words of one man that it was better for him to go to the village of Killet. Another man in his memoirs says that this place is not so different from the southern village. Even after consulting with other people, he still couldn't find the perfect place to go. Fortunately, somehow, out of the blue, he heard the name of the city, which made his heart flutter. He says that, after all, his ultimate goal is Elm. City Dungeon Elm. After meeting and saying goodbye, his new journey begins. A little fairy sits on his arm and says something that, as he can see, many people have come to the garden. The main character asks her again about the fact that many people came to the fairy garden. The girl responds positively and says that they had a strange appearance and they made loud, incomprehensible noises and walked around the column. The guy seems to understand what he's talking about. It looks like they explored the column because he cleared it. Lisa says they were gone by the time she woke up. At the top of the flower, he asks if this is true. Rook hopes that they won't find out that he did it. The girl says with annoyance that her time is up. Lisa says they'll see each other later. Rook agrees and says he will call her tomorrow if he can. The fairy says that in this case, she will wait for tomorrow. The main character thinks to himself that talking leisurely like this is real bliss. He waves his hand after her. Rip says that tomorrow he will also need to do everything in his power. In any case, an unexpected meeting with Lisa cured his tired soul from a long and difficult journey. It has been 5 days since he went to the underground city of Elm. And during these days, they passed 3 small villages and 1 camp. Actually, their carriage is not that slow. If you compare it, it's a little faster than jogging. Safety is also guaranteed, as there are 2 experienced adventurers who have also joined them as guards. Although it got a little cramped. Because of this, there is a rather unpleasant smell inside the wagon. All the people are sitting in silence. The main character thinks to himself about whether he will be arrested if he applies purification to everyone here. However, there was something much more unpleasant than all this. The wheel hit a bump, and the main character jumped in surprise, exclaiming. The shaking inside the wagon and the roughness of the road. It was the worst. He has already recaptured everything for himself during this trip. It was so painful that on the second day he fell to the ground after getting out of the carriage. He says his backside can now split into 4 pieces. The man next to him, laughing, asks if he's okay and says that all he can tell him is to get used to it. To be honest, he underestimated traveling in this world. He is told that they will stop here today. The main character wearily says that they arrived early today, and he will be able to have a good rest today. A city street appears before his eyes. During his journey, he found out that the roads in the kingdom of Karim are quite safe, and there are many places that we can visit during the trip. At first, he thought that every city here would be like a fortress, as monsters in this world could attack at any moment. But thanks to cities like this one, travelers no longer had to camp so often. However, the hotel fee was not included in the trip fee, so it all depends on each person. Whether he wants to relax in a cheap hotel, in an expensive hotel, or spend the night in a brothel. The main character says that there are many shops here, but first he needs to find a hotel for the night. Since the number of rooms in a hotel is limited, there are people who have to spend the night in some bars, or even under the night sky. Already at the hotel, the main character has clarified that he wants to buy a night and dinner, and they also say that it will cost 5 bronze coins. The man behind the counter says his room is the last one on the second floor. Rook says he's thinking about going for a walk, so if he recommends any stores, he will be very grateful. The main character is already on the street saying that 5 bronze coins per night is quite expensive. Actually, he does not plan to buy anything, but looking at goods in stores is one of the entertainment. When traveling, he approaches one of the shops. There's a man standing behind her who politely greets him. He thinks to himself that he has never seen these fruits before. Already at another shop, the guy asks for 1 sausage. The man says that he has 3 bronze coins. He eats the delicacy and says it would be much tastier if they used more herbs to hide the smell. On the other hand, such wildness is a kind of highlight of this city. Suddenly, someone turns to him and asks if he wants to try another meat. 2 beautiful girls turn to him. One of them touches the breast of the other and says that she can guarantee him that these pieces of meat are very tender. The brunette asks what he can say. The second girl suggests that maybe he wants to play with both of them. The main character blushes and politely refuses thanks. He thinks to himself that this is also one of the highlights of the city. The girls wave after him and say they will be waiting for him. He can't deny that it was a very attractive offer, but he can't spend too much while traveling. Maybe another time he will definitely agree. He notices a sign with a book and makes the assumption that it might be a bookstore. He is surprised that someone would open a bookstore in such a place. He's going inside. He looks at books and finds an encyclopedia of plants and a biography of the hero. He is surprised that this is a real bookstore, because books here should be the limit of luxury. What if the thieves break in or, worse, someone robs them? He makes the assumption that the store owner is actually a very strong magician, or something like that. However, he notices an ordinary old lady. He thinks that he probably still has a lot to learn about this world. He notices a book about herbs and the history of the kingdom of Karim. He could have bought them, but if he had a magic bag. But he doesn't have it. He also notices the encyclopedia of monsters, and even thinks about buying it. Then a book about goblin poetry catches his eye. He looks at the next book and is very surprised that it is a sacred magical grimoire. He wonders to himself if this is a blue grimoire. He thinks there's something wrong here. He takes the book and sees that it is a grimoire of the Holy Land. He thought so. The information he got from his assessment skill increased. He still wonders if this is a sacred magical grimoire. He makes the assumption that perhaps the goddess's blessing has hung up his grade level. He puts the book in front of the saleswoman and apologetically asks if he can take it. She asks again if he wants to buy it. The grandmother says that he has not yet understood what is the matter, and then says that the young man will not be able to return the money later. He says with a smile on his face that everything is fine, and it seems to him that he knows what this book is about, since I've already checked inside. The old lady tells him to always check the contents of books, because you can never be too careful. She also says that it will cost him 4 gold coins. The main character is horrified by the price. He says to himself that you might as well rip off his organs and sell them. He knows it's an inflated price, but he can't do anything about it. Privately, the young man assumes that the most important thing is that if he starts haggling, she may not even sell it to him. He's almost crying. His curiosity about the new blue grimoire and the appraisal skill eventually wins out, and he decides to leave this place as soon as possible. He's already at the hotel. The main character lies on the bed and examines the grimoire. He says that this is the first time he has heard of holy magic, and he wonders if this means that this spell of the Holy Land is a sacred attribute. In any case, the knowledge that the attribute he possesses is actually a saint is quite great. Apparently, there are 6 attributes of magic plus a saint, which makes him the 7th. He says he's interested. He examines the contents of the book and wonders what kind of spell it is. He reads the text. He suggests that it might be a spell to make a holy stone out of an ordinary stone. He says he needs to try using it now and that he doesn't think he'll have a problem with it. He stretches out his hand and puts the other on his chest, calling for the blessing and breath of the Holy Land. At the end, he pronounces the end of the spell in the form of the Holy Land. His hand starts to glow. He thinks to himself that something is going on. A ball appears, then it falls to the ground, and the glow stops. He asks in disbelief if that's all. He picks up a beautiful ball and asks himself what it is, and then makes the assumption that it is a magic stone. By himself, he thinks that this is a holy stone, or a stone that contains holy power. He asks aloud about the holy stone or the holy power. He repeats the words that it is a holy stone again and asks himself what he should do now. He stops himself abruptly, and then make the assumption that this stone is actually there. He squeezes it and puts it to his heart. His gut tells him that this is it, what he was looking for. He holds out his hand with a ball and calls for someone to respond to his voice and show him the way, and then adds the words that this is the call of the fairies. A magic circle appears, and then a lot of white lines form a cocoon, from which a fairy figure appears. Lisa greets his greetings and mentions that they haven't seen each other for a long time. The main character also greets her. He responds positively and says that it really was a long time ago, and they ask her how she's doing. The girl says she's doing great. She says that today she will go to the garden in order to start sprouting a blue flower. She also shares with the main character that there is a yellow beetle that loves this blue flower. The main character says he understands her. He thinks to himself that it's like he's looking out for his little niece or something. Lisa says she tried very hard to move the beetle away from the blue flower this afternoon. The main character praises me and says that she really did a good job. You say that after that. She looked at the tops of the blue flower. Rook answers her. They say it sounds very convenient. The fairy wants to continue her story, but says it's time for her to return. She says they'll see each other later. The guy responds positively and says that they will see each other next time. The fairy disappears abruptly. The main character is in great perplexity and asks himself what kind of magic it is. He says that a spell that uses a lot of magical powers to talk to a fairy seems wrong. It's like he just went to a nightclub just to talk to some girls or something. But he says that the name of the spell summoning the fairy speaks for itself, so technically this is the correct way to use the spell. He says Lisa is pretty cute, but in those few minutes she took away almost all of his magic power. It looks like he won't use the spell often. This was what he originally thought. Liz is sitting on his arm again, and he asks her what happened next. The girl says that then, a red flower and a yellow flower appeared. In the end, the main character succumbed to temptation and continued to summon her every single day, and to replenish magical energy. He makes a holy stone every morning while talking about the Holy Land. He falls asleep in the cart. After all, it definitely took away his stamina, but at least his magic power is recovering. During the day, he lets his stamina recover in order to summon Liz at night. He calls her so often because it's very lonely for him to spend the night at the hotel. All he sees in the cart are boring and sweaty guys, adventurers, and a little bit of the landscape that seeps out of the small windows. He just can't help but remember his old world and his friends, as well as the people he met after he came to this world. However, strangely enough, after regular meetings with Liz, his desire to get to Elm became even greater. They are sitting on the riverbank. One of the adventurers says that Elma's dungeon is quite heavy. The other man agrees and says that Elma's dungeon is quite heavy. The other man agrees and says that after all, it has 40 floors. He liked to hear about Elma from other adventurers during a break in their journey, as well as their own adventure stories and how they challenged other dungeons and the people they met during their adventures. The main character believes that each of their stories is very fascinating. However, at the same time, it makes him realize how weak he really is. He remembers that monster. If only he hadn't had that paralyzing knife when he faced the huge boar. He doubts that he would have been hailed as a hero. He is sure that with his current abilities, traveling around the world will be nothing more than a pipe dream. So, in this case, in order to realize this dream, as well as in order to stay alive in this world, he needs to become much stronger. The main character is sitting in the cart when the driver turns to him and tells him to look out the window because Elm is already visible. The dungeon city of Elm, as well as high-level adventurers who could easily destroy monsters, such as a huge boar, where there's a 40-story dungeon and monsters he's never seen before. Rook thanks the man for his help all this time. The man says that it is not worth thanking him and praises the main character. They say he held up well. The young man stretches and expresses his joy. After all, he had finally arrived. He looks at the city and says that now it is Elm, his new home. He thought it would look a little more intimidating, since it is called this city of dungeons. But this city actually looks pretty cute. The main character is wondering what he should do first. He makes the assumption that he first needs to find a hotel or contact the guild, or maybe take a look at the dungeon first. However, he stops himself and says that he'd better eat something delicious first to celebrate his arrival in the city. The beautiful waitress thanks him for waiting and delivering the order, says that their shop is famous for its meat broths and meat on a spit. She also recommends that he try their wine. The girl asks him if this is his first time in Elma. The guy doesn't ask her how she guessed. The waitress says she just saw him looking at all the counters, until I came in here. She remembers how the main character walked down the street and asked himself what this column was for and what this wall was made of. Rook smiles and says that the atmosphere in this city is completely different than in other cities he has visited. The girl exclaims enthusiastically and asks where he came from. The guy replies that he is from Lakenfurt. She repeats the name of the city and says she has never heard of this city. The main character tells her that this is a town to the east of here, and they add that it is 20 days away. On the cart, the girl is surprised that he has come from such a distance and tells him to call her if he needs anything else. She turns abruptly to another customer and says she's on her way. To the question of waiting time, the main character thinks to himself that it looks like there are few people in the kingdom of Karam who know about the map. In addition, monsters appear around the city, so people should not go beyond its surroundings. The guy drinks the drink and thinks it's a bit like Elm. That's why, as long as he's an adventurer or a merchant, he's already considered good if he's been to at least 3 cities. He's still drinking the drink. The main character thinks to himself that this is very good, especially for just 5 bronze coins. He tried out this recommended wine and realized that it was worth the money. The main character thinks he regretted spending the money, but it seems like it's worth it. He wonders what the meat broth tastes like. The men next to him are chatting. One of them speaks of a good catch today. The second one agrees and answers him, saying that they give good money for orcs. The guy tastes the broth and realizes that it is very tasty. He seems to have found a good place in the city. 2 men are talking in the background again. One of them asks if they will go down to this lower floor tomorrow. He says he means they're getting lucky. The second man confirms his words, but says that we must not forget what creatures are hiding on the lower floor. And the interest says that his friend is right, and that he thinks that from time to time they will be able to descend. The man asks if El Rawi is coming today. The second one tells him that today is not a good day, to which they hear that it is much more difficult to get loot when El Rawi is not with them. He says they can earn more if they go to the lower floors, but it's impossible for them. The main character thinks to himself that it looks like a team of ladies. However, he understands that, most likely, this is a team that is worried about going to the lower floors. He hears one of the men saying that everything is pretty suspicious in the West. His friend asks what he means. He says he doesn't know, because he just heard about it. He says something happened there. People don't say that there is no grass skirt without goblins. The guy says something happened there. People don't say that there is no grass skirt without goblins. The guy says something he's never heard of before. The man replies that he invented it himself, to which he receives a compliment that he is a genius. It's funny. He abruptly puts the mug with the drink on the table. He says that everything is fine after catching his breath. He's already had enough of the atmosphere of this place, and it's time for him to leave. But first he wants to do something. He turns to the waitress, asks him questioningly, and tells him to wait a minute. The main character is walking down the street. He says that he should go ahead along the road, then turn right to the third corner, and when he reaches the end, turn right again, and find this thing. He remembers a conversation with a girl. She says there's one cheap and reliable hotel. She says she can tell you about her. But in return, he has to come here one more time. He finds this place and talks about it, out loud, asking. He apologizes and enters. The hands are placed in the room. The guy gets tired and sits down on the bed, exhales and says that he can finally rest. From the time he entered the city, he did not relax his vigilance, as he could meet any pickpockets or thieves. It's been a long time since he's relaxed like this, since he left the band. The guy says he can finally sleep, but stops himself and says he needs some comfort. A fairy is sitting on his arm. She says she dozed off at the top of the gate and shows a sign that she is asleep. The main character asks her where she could have dozed off at the top of the gate. And what a place it was. The girl is happy to say that this is a comfortable and wonderful place. After all, there are flowers there. He still didn't understand what she was talking about. She says that then there was a splash of water, and the house was there. Rook asks her about the house. The girl responds positively. Liz says it's time for her to come back. The guy is surprised that this is already happening. He thinks to himself that he will start exploring the dungeon tomorrow, so he needs to make holy stones in the morning. He thinks he needs to tell her that he won't be able to call her that often starting tomorrow. But he doesn't have time to say anything. The girl says goodbye to him and says that she is in a hurry. The guy belatedly agrees and also says goodbye, waving his hand at her. Suddenly, he notices the rain and talks about it, wondering. The next day comes. It's raining. The guy says it's real rain. He remembers that Liz is a fairy and she is close to the spirit. That's why she's so sensitive to natural phenomena. Besides, he doesn't know if whether spirits exist or not. He says he went to the guild and takes the key with him. He asks the old man behind the counter if he can tell where she is. The old man calls him a beginner and says he needs to get out of the southern part of the city and walk straight when he leaves the hotel. He also says he needs to go all the way to the dead end and then turn right. The main character walks down the street, thinking to himself that Elm is much bigger than he imagined. The streets are quite confusing, and it's easy to get lost here. However, in any case, he needs to remember the way to the guild. At first, he walks down the street and is surprised that he has come to a dead end. He looks in front of him and exclaims questioningly. Then again and again. He sees a wall in front of him, saying that this dead end is a huge wall. In front of him, saying that this dead end is a huge wall. He starts to panic, asking about the fact that this is yesterday's wall. Elma. Rook makes the assumption that he turned somewhere wrong. He turns from side to side. He claims that he went straight, just as he was told. He says that it seems to him that the wall is really 100 meters high. He asks if this is exactly the outer wall of Elm. He needs to turn here, just like the innkeeper said. He wonders what kind of fortress is inside the city. He goes forward and says he sees something from there. He wonders if this is a gate. He says it's a gate, and he sees a little bit of what's inside. However, he says that there are guards here, so this is a real fortress, and he will need to look there. He gets the feeling that he's missing something, and he wonders about it. Suddenly, he sees a building and asks himself if it is a guild building. Then the main character answers himself and says that it must really be the guild building. He understands what it means that the guild is designed to be like others, so that the seeker or adventurer can recognize it at a glance. Now he understands what Mel meant when she said that the guild buildings are the same. The main character is smiling. He goes ahead and goes inside. He thinks to himself that it looks like many adventurers have taken a break because of the torrential rain. He comes up to the counter and apologizes, says that he came from another city and asks if he needs to register again. The girl at the counter responds positively and says that he can register right now. In this case, the main character will be able to sell magic stones to them. He says that in this case, he doesn't have to register right now. He also adds that he needs to go to some places and asks where he can find a resource center. Rook specifies that he should be here. The girl responds positively and says that he is on the second floor. She places a wooden plaque in front of him and asks him to fill out a form and show his guild ID to finish. The main character says about himself that he knew about it. After all, they give him a wooden plaque again. He says what nostalgia pierces him. He feels like he's come back again. He thinks to himself that he should stand by the word. The main character knocks on the door and apologizes for the suddenness. He sees an old lady with ears. She asks him what kind of guests they are. The guy is a little confused. He says it's nice to meet you and introduces himself as Rook. He also says that he came here from another city. The old lady says that she is also pleased and introduces herself as Carla. She's the administrator of this place. The woman also says that their doors are always open to him. He thinks to himself that this grandmother with animal ears is still cute. He's looking at books. Rook finds an encyclopedia of monsters, an encyclopedia of plants, a history book and stories about heroes. He notices to himself that the assortment is exactly the same as in other cities. He finds books about Elma's dungeon. He's wondering what's inside. He finds information about the 40 floors of the Elm dungeon in this book. At the top, all the floors are made of stone blocks. Monsters range from A to F rank, while the boss is on the lower floor of the S rank. This is more like the game Dungeons from his world. Monsters encountered in the dungeons: slug or goblins, rabbit, hornet, or forest wolf. Suddenly, he stumbles upon a dungeon map. The guy says it's a little weird and suggests that he will have to copy it manually. It annoys him, but he reassures himself that it is for his survival. He says he misses the phone. And if there was a way to use paper more easily, the pencil would be glad. Suddenly, he notices a symbol on the left and thinks that it means a staircase on the upper level. In this case, on the right. He can't believe it. The items he expected in the dungeon were doubled. He breaks into a satisfied smile. He looks at the map and thinks to himself about the 3-layered walls, the stairs leading to the other side of the wall, and the doors leading to the other side. He is standing again near the gate that he found recently. The young man says that there is a dungeon behind these walls. Rook greets the guards. He understood why he felt something. These walls exist to protect the dungeon from the inside, and on the other side are walls protecting the city from the dungeon. He goes inside. The guy says that this is the initial room of the dungeon, and looks around the room. He notices the door and says it leads inside. The guy looks around everyone in this room and notices that there are a lot of people who look strong. By their belongings and the surrounding aura, you can tell that they are on another level. Suddenly, his attention is attracted by an exclamation from the side. Someone is encouraging their friends to get started. The main character thinks he looks like he's the only loner here. He notices the girl next to him and can't believe his eyes. These hair, ears, slimness, and a big bow tell him that she is an elf. He is surprised and thinks to himself that she looks like an elf from a fantasy. The girl looks at him. Rook blushes, notices her gaze, and thinks to himself that they have just crossed eyes. He urges himself to calm down and pull himself together. He was interested, but in them because of his greed. He sees the guard asking for 1 silver per person. The man in front says that there are 4 of them. The other man says they'll see each other again. The girl screams for him to stop right now. The girl screams for him to stop right now. The main character notices that this is a group from a completely different league than everyone in this room. He thinks he should go too. He can watch them for now, but he will be able to talk if he continues to work hard in the city. The guard also asks him for 1 silver per person. The main character asks him to take the money. Right now, he has set his priorities for today. The book said he would find it right after the stairs. Rook is smiling. He sees a monolith of displacement in front of him. This monolith of displacement is the incomprehensible symbol from the book. This thing can send anyone to any floor, and it can be used for free. He touches it and says that he just needs to touch it to register. He notices that it's strange that he didn't feel much, and yet his goal today is, he says that all the preparations have been completed. His goal is to explore the rooms in 6F and return to B1F unharmed. He says you care about it, even if you just imagine it. What he means is that teleporting is cool, because it's a simple move. It's time for him to explore the dungeon. Let the research begin. The main character thinks that this is a typical dungeon for beginners. After all, the only monsters that can appear on the first floor are slugs. He looks at the dungeon map and notices that the structure is quite simple. He's thinking about exploring everything here. Suddenly, he notices something in the room and says that someone is there. He sees two boys and a man surround the slug. The man praises the children and says that they surrounded him. He urges them not to let him escape. One of the boys agrees with his father, and the other says that he will also beat him. The main character understands what the first floor is like. He believes that staying on the ground floor is absolutely useless, and he needs to get to the second floor faster. He notices the entrance to the second floor. It seems that there is no one on the stairs, and the monsters do not appear there. He thinks to himself that with these turns of the stairs, he feels like he's back in high school. He realizes that he is on the second floor. He says to himself that this is it. He notices people running after the rabbit. The main character notices that he is very cute. People shout for the food not to run away and urge him to stop. They catch up with him and say they have to do it, and that is, kill him. The guy looks at it in disbelief and thinks to himself that, of course, he understands everything, but not this. People say the meat fell off him. The guy says it was a great hunt, and one of them suggests going even further. The girl agrees. The guy says he has to move on. He understands why this dungeon is so popular. He quickly passes the third floor, killing some slug. Anyone can hunt in this dungeon, from children to adventurers. He comes to the fourth floor. You can sell the dropped magic stones and eat the resulting meat. In this dungeon, you can practice and learn how to survive. This is a great place to practice and hunt. The fifth floor also passes. He kills goblins. He says he kills goblins and gets only magic stones. It feels like a loss of money. He says that he finally got to the sixth floor, and they wonder if he overdid it, because he raised the difficulty level. He says he needs to try and touches the stone. Suddenly he notices something. This is the first floor. Now the floors available to him are inside his head. He touches the stone and thinks about the ground floor. The hand disappears. The guy turns out to be nowhere. He exclaims questioningly and asks himself where he has teleported to, and if it is true. Ground floor. He goes to the stairs and looks up. I notice the guards at the entrance. The young man concludes that he really ended up on the ground floor. Rook breaks into a satisfied smile and shouts that this is incredible. As expected from Isekai, he's teleporting again. Then again and again. He continues to cheer. The girl next to him makes the assumption that he is a beginner. The guy next to her says, "That's how newbies always behave." The guy exclaims joyfully. He jumped 5 floors. There is still time before eating, and he does not know what to do. He makes a suggestion that he should go back and walk 5 floors again to get used to hunting goblins. Perhaps he can go to the guild and copy the map of the next floor. He didn't think too long, and went to the guild to copy the map and eat early. Then he returned to the 6th floor and started over. The main character thinks that the forest wolves are the main monsters of the 6th floor. He says he realized they were shedding their fur. And he also says that, to be honest, these forest wolves have already got him. Suddenly, a forest wolf attacks him. The main character notices this and easily stops his attack. He says it's very good and throws his carcass into the wall. The guy notices that he is much cleaner than the wild ones, and if he does not need to get dirty, then he will take it away. Although his backpack is going to burst right now, he says he can finish on the 6th floor. Then he goes to the 7th. He thinks that if he turns on this square and follows the line, then there will be a room to his right. The main character notices this room. He moved forward without any plan, and more difficult opponents began to appear. He looks at the map. The difficulty of the dungeon has increased. Now everything began to look the same, so you had to be very careful, otherwise you could easily get lost. The main character got lost. I asked myself if this is the 4th square. He's drawing something with a stone. He says that it is very difficult to go through this maze, even focusing on the map. It gets easier when he notices another team. Suddenly, he sees a forest wolf and a kobold. He can't calculate the distance properly. And if they attack at the same time, then he may not be able to cope. He takes a sharp step forward and thinks that in this case there must be an exact victory first. He's killing a wolf, and then abruptly turns around and attacks another monster. With the help of a spear, he kills him too. He says he managed to beat them both. He begins to glow and asks himself if this is a blessing from the gods. Rook also says that if he counts correctly, then this is the 10th. Now he's looking for something on the walls, and they are successfully found. This is the mark he left recently. The main character says that the passage is here. The main character is thinking about the battle with the forest wolf and the kobold. Igor, The attacks were precisely coordinated. There's a certain hostility between members of the same species. For example, relatives with wolves. He is also interested in the relationship between monsters and dungeon floors. There are mostly only animals on this floor. Everyone just goes ahead. After all, this is a dungeon. He's walking somewhere in a semi-squat. Rook asked me to stop lowering the ceiling and doing all sorts of things so suddenly. He makes it look like he's in the game. The main character says that it will be very bad to fall when he's near a cliff. He constantly thinks about only one thing, where to go next. The 11th floor is coming. He says it's a relief because he finally got there. The main character says that he underestimated the dungeon a bit because the first floors were much simpler. He also says that now he needs to go back and rest. But before that, he needs to somehow deal with the fur that is tied to his torso. He's already been thinking about where to go near the guild. He says it should be good there. The guild buys only magic stones in front of the dungeon. There is a stall where they mostly buy things, not sell them. He approaches the man behind the shop and says he wants to sell the hide. The man greets him and says that the skin is very clean. There is no dust on it and it does not smell at all. The skin is in excellent condition. The merchant says that he will give about 7 silver coins for 4 pieces, and they ask if this will suit the main character. Rook agrees and thinks to himself that cleaning them was a good idea. After that, he immediately went to the hut and fell asleep. The battles were more difficult in the dungeon itself, because he underestimated this adventure. The next morning, he sold the magic stones to the guild. He gathered information about the dungeon up to the 12th floor and returned there. Rook found himself on the 11th floor. He thinks to himself that this is probably a more suitable place for his level. Also, compared to yesterday's rush, today he will pass the floors more calmly. He walks forward and is startled by what he sees in front of him. You've seen a lot of adventurers. He notices that it's too bright for a dungeon. And besides, there are a lot of people. A man asks if they can go to the eastern zone today. The girl. Another man says that yesterday, the entire 13th floor was just packed with orcs. The guy understands how it was. According to the books, there are orcs and desert cows on this floor. They say that orcs make a profit even in restaurants, and if someone wants to make money, they need to choose the right floor. If there were adventurers here, it would become more difficult to meet someone. He's on the 12th floor. The main character says he didn't want to rush it. He says it looks like it's going to be as easy as yesterday, so he just keeps going. In that case, he thinks he has to reach the 16th floor. He asks himself if he should go there. After all, there's a certain thing waiting on this floor, and no one likes it at all. Suddenly, he notices something at the end of the corridor. The outline of a bull appears. A huge desert cow is rushing at the main character, and it is unclear what it will do. The main character asks who he is and puts him in the rack. This is a 4-legged monster in the form of a desert cow. About myself. The guy thinks it's unsafe to dodge her punches. He manages to injure her. However, she runs away anyway. The guy asks if he got hit, but it seems she didn't even feel it. He turns back and is even more surprised, wondering. The main character realizes that she is coming back. Rook realizes that he is aiming at the heart. It's too risky. He says the light ball is waiting for her. The guy screams for her to get it and releases a spell at her. It hits the cow and it bounces. The main character is extremely surprised and cannot believe it. A desert cow flies off the ceiling and falls in front of the main character. He's all dirty. Rook doesn't believe it, but reassures himself and says that everything is fine. He tries to wipe himself off and say that it's just an abomination. They understand that it's her brain. He says he needs to wash up urgently. Suddenly, the dirt disappears from his hands. He exclaims in disbelief. He says it couldn't have been any other way. The blood seemed to evaporate. A substance similar to slime appeared in front of him. He wonders what it is and makes the assumption that it is white slime, but immediately rejects it and says that it is cuter than slime. He touches it and says it's still warm and feels like it's filled with water. He says that if he pushes, most likely, this bubble will burst. That's what happens. The main character says that he can do without it somehow. The guy tastes it and says it's a very familiar smell. The young man realizes that it is milk and says that it is still a cow after all. The guy says it looks like a pack of milk. He's already on the 13th floor. Even here, he's already on the 14th floor meeting someone. The guy climbs over an obstacle and says that these things are very annoying. He notices that there is no one on the 15th floor. He says that even so, he will try to raise the level. Suddenly, a hoof appears from the corner. Rook notices this. He is glad that they have finally started to appear. It's an orc, and he knows everything about it. The main character notices that he keeps his distance, even though he is a monster. In this case, he prefers to start first and rushes into the attack. The orc was able to dodge. He counterattacks and blocks the guy's spear. The young man is surprised. The monster raises his fist to strike, but the main character dodges. The main character realizes that he relies on his strength. He stared a little. In the end, it was like that. Somehow he was able to anticipate. In a battle between a kobold and a desert cow, they exchanged blows. As expected, his body was changing. The main character realizes that the monster is open and can now deliver the final blow. He thinks the orc would have broken his bones for sure. In the past world, he shouts that this is retribution and punches him in the jaw. He's getting stronger. Rook screams that it's time to end it. He hits him in the neck with a spear and cuts it open. It turned out even worse than he thought. After all, he really became an order of magnitude stronger. He cuts off the monster's head while landing. He says that the fact that he defeated the orc only confirms its combat power. Everyone seems to be hunting orcs here, but he's still a beginner. He notices an incomprehensible thing and asks what it is. The girl from the guild says it's a spatula. The main character asks her again. She responds positively and repeats that it is a spatula. The guy makes the assumption that this is some kind of special spatula. However, the girl says that there is nothing special about it, and it often falls out. The main character repeats her last words, and the girl confirms them, saying that he constantly falls out. She picks up a scroll and says that this improved scroll is just a jackpot, and she can buy it from him for 5 gold pieces. She asks what he thinks. The main character. She thinks that, apparently, she is very much interested in buying this scroll. He remembers the words of Han, who told him about the improved scrolls. It is used when he needs to level up his armor or weapons. The guy says he'll keep it for himself. The girl gets upset, but does not contradict. The main character says that after that, he got used to the floor and its inhabitants. Already at the hotel, he is going to eat. The guy exhales. The man says he's kind of calm today. The hand says that he decided to relax and walk around the city, and he also needs to fix his spear. The man says that he takes rest seriously and praises it. He also says that those who move too fast die in a hurry. And what if he wants to purify his soul? He knows the perfect place. The main character asks him again about the ideal place. The man shows his chest with gestures and says that this thing will help. The main character understands what he is talking about and blushes. The old man tells him about the girls with animal ears, and that they are gathered there, ranging from small to huge. The main character says that he thought there would be a lot of people in the city. However, it seems that the entrance is only for adventurers. There are only adults inside, and he is sure that he will be able to ask questions in the place where he definitely needs to go. The only thing he doesn't like about this world is that he can't find out the assortment of the store without going inside. He is indignant and asks himself why it is impossible to hang a board on which to write. He thinks that there are almost no such boards anywhere. Therefore, the adventurers don't know if they should enter. He looks at the clothes sign and says it's a tavern instead of a tailor. Then he notices other signs and says it's a pharmacy. In a regular store. He also notices a clipping with a book and says that he will look into the bookstore later. He says he wants to go to a couple of shops, but first he needs to go to the blacksmith. The worker greets him and asks what he wants. The main character hands him a spear and says he would like to fix it. The man says that it is an iron spear, and that changing the shape of the edge and fixing the stick will cost 3 silver coins. The main character agrees and tells him to do so. The man says that he will not have time to blink, as everything will be ready. In the meantime, he can look around here. The main character thinks that he wanted to study business abroad, but did not because he was afraid. He sees this man handing the spear to the boss. Rook notices that there are almost no decorations here, and one gets the impression, as well as from the examples of books, He notices a sword on the wall and realizes that its base is blue. He notices that there is no paint on it, so it is assumed that it is blue because it was forged. The man next to me says it's mithril. The man character asks him again. The worker says that mithril uses magic, so it is light and strong, and that it is mainly used to create magical items and weapons. The guy says he now understands what mithril is like. When someone uses magic or magic elements, the items drop out much better. I agree with the legend. If someone uses these elements, the power will be transferred to the weapon, and the item itself has no magical properties, but it has magical abilities. The worker says that this smaller one is made of mithril. The guy asks if he can ask him to improve it with magic. The man replies that it won't work here. You need a special magical setup, and that you need to use alchemy to combine elements and weapons. In all corners of the world, people are specially trained in this, and it is also difficult to get the material. The man says that he would be glad to meet someone who knows how to do this. The old man in the back apologizes to him for not living up to his expectations and removes him with a stick. They tell him to stop talking nonsense. The man complains that he's in pain. The old man returns the finished spear to him. The main character thanks him. Old man, make the assumption that he only hopes for strength and magical elements. He urges him to learn how to use it properly first, and to say that he handled the spear very badly. The guy says not to worry and that he will definitely improve. He thinks to himself that it is not for nothing that he is considered a good blacksmith. He thinks they've had a great conversation about magic weapons, and says he gets the impression there's something else he doesn't know. Rook thinks there's a chance that if you make such a crazy weapon, people from all over the world will surround you. If that doesn't suit you, then you should keep your mouth shut. However, the guy says that he still doesn't have money for weapons of this kind. He believes that the first thing to do is to find as many books about magic as possible. He reads books and realizes that there is almost nothing about the char he saw, but if he finds it, he'll get a very good deal. He comes across a huge number of books and thinks that there are a lot of books that can only be found in big cities. Of the widely distributed books here is a book with marks about his life. He's wondering if there are books about food and/or toilets. He finds a book about a boy who turned into slime. No one would believe these stories in his world, but anything is possible here. He doesn't even know where to start. He made the assumption that he should start with creative abilities. Suddenly, he notices a book about spirit magic. He recalls that more than 6 volumes have been written about this magic, and it is believed that it is used by elves. He thinks it's necessary to look through it and reaches for the book. Suddenly, a strange hand touches him. He notices the same elf who also wanted to take this book.